on the migrant-welcoming policies of Mayor Wu and others. We'll open phone and text lines. You worried that by the end of these 4 long years, Massachusetts will no longer be Massachusetts.
I'm Marjorie Egan, then NBC Sports Boston's Trenni Casey on what's possibly the biggest rivalry in sports right now between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese in the WNBA. Are the flagrant fouls and massive media hype good for the league or just for ratings? Plus, third-place Miss Maine, Jordon Hudson, goes on the offense against reporters covering her relationship with Bill Belichick, including Jim Browder, who just did some independent reporting in Provincetown. It's all I had in the first hour of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. President Trump says he will suspend his 50% tariffs on imported products from the European Union, at least until early July. NPR's Danielle Kurtzleben reports Trump had only introduced the surprisingly high tariff rate on the EU last week.
On Friday, he floated the idea of 50% tariffs on EU goods starting June 1st. Sunday, after EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said she had spoken to Trump, he posted that he had agreed to postpone the tariffs to July 9th. Now, he has written on social media that he was, quote, extremely satisfied with a 50% tariff, adding he will set rates if he and the EU are unable to make a deal. Trump added that the EU has now reached out to set dates to negotiate tariff rates. His deadlines for tariffs on China and many other countries will come this summer. If deals are not reached by those dates, tariffs are set to ratchet upward. Danielle Kurtzleben, NPR News, the White House.
NPR has learned the Trump administration is asking federal agencies to cancel their remaining federal contracts with Harvard University. That's reportedly worth about $100 million. The Trump administration claims Harvard engages in anti-Semitism. The university has denied this and says cutting funding will cut essential healthcare research. NPR and 3 Colorado public radio stations have filed suit in federal court against the Trump administration today. This is over the president's recent executive order purportedly barring the use of congressionally appropriated funding for NPR and PBS. NPR's David Folkenflik has more.
The lawsuit says that the president's order on May 1st seeking to strip essentially NPR and PBS of all federal funds is unconstitutional, and that it's a violation of free speech and First Amendment protections because the government is seeking to retaliate against the 2 national public broadcasters for their coverage.
NPR's David Folkenflik reporting the White House has not released an immediate response to the lawsuit. The number of mothers with mental health struggles has increased in recent years. NPR's Ritu Chatterjee reports that's according to a new study in JAMA Internal Medicine.
Researchers looked at data from nearly 200,000 mothers of kids under 18 who participated in the National Survey of Children's Health. Mothers reporting excellent mental health declined from 38% in 2016 to 26% in 2023. And mothers who said their mental health was fair or poor increased during this time. Study author Jamie Daw is at Columbia University.
In 2023, this means about 1 in 12 moms are saying they have fair or poor mental health, where back in 2016, it was about 1 in 20. It's a pretty large increase in a relatively short period of time.
Daw says single mothers and those with children on Medicaid reported poorer mental and physical health. Ritu Chatterjee, NPR News.
This is NPR.
Good morning with the latest from the GBH Newsroom. I'm Henry Santoro. Brookline's annual town meeting starts today with the town's fiscal woes taking front and center stage. As with every spring session of town meeting, the budget is the biggest item on the agenda. And this year, town meeting members will vote on whether to approve a $456 million budget that maintains the town's services and includes millions of dollars in cuts to Brookline schools. There are 30 items on the docket this year, including resolutions on broker fees, democracy and support for transgender people, proposed changes to disability accommodation bylaws, and a possible town-wide ban on foie gras. Harvard students are reacting to President Trump saying on Truth Social that he may revoke more funding from the university. As we've been hearing, Trump says he's considering redirecting $3 billion in grants from Harvard to trade schools across the United States. Harvard senior Leo Gurdon is from Sweden.
Trump is a very predictable poker player. If he sees resistance, then he definitely folds. But if a strategy of intimidation and just sending a letter of demands that goes well beyond the law, if that works, then he's going to continue. So I think that Harvard is definitely teaching Trump a class right now.
Last week, the Trump administration took steps to stop Harvard from enrolling international students. A federal judge has temporarily blocked that effort. And in sports, Red Sox Brewers back at it again. Game 2 of their series in Milwaukee tonight, 7:40 start. And the French Open tennis tournament is into its third day at Roland Garros. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from the Skoll Foundation, dedicated to powering social innovators to transform the world. Learn more at skoll.org. And Jarl and Pamela Mohn, focusing on civil liberties, foster youth, public radio, and the arts.
Here's Jim Brady. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We are back here tomorrow with Boston Mayor Michelle Wu. She's going to be with us, I think, from 12 to 1. Is she going to be here?
12 to 1.
12 to 1, taking our questions and yours. And the Governor of the Commonwealth, Maura Healey, will be here June 25th. Hello, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. Right now, there's a fabulous piece by our former colleague, Karen Miller, in the Boston Globe, the title of which is "Why is Donald Trump Going After Massachusetts?" It puts into stark relief what's at stake for our state under this newish Trump administration. Here's a quote: "Our economy is deeply reliant on elite colleges, elite hospitals, and the elite minds who come here from around the world. In Massachusetts, like it or not, we have built an economy on expertise, excellence, and education." And she makes the case that he is trying to tear it down. If you missed it, the administration is telling all federal agencies on Tuesday they should stop doing business with Harvard, on top of the increase in ICE raids around the Commonwealth. He's cut disaster aid, school funding, health money, obviously huge research cuts. Then there's the coming cuts on environmental spending, on and on. So the lines are open at 877-301-8970 to call or text. As Massachusetts is targeted, we stand to lose a staggering amount of federal funding. We also risk losing the very things that make us a desirable place to be, our culture of learning, of research, of inclusivity. Do you worry about what Massachusetts will look like? I was going to say after 4 years of Trump. How about after 4 months of Donald Trump? 877-301-8970. It really is true. I mean, you've asked the question of a lot of people, is he targeting blue states over red states? Even if it's not a conscious thing, it's the things that Trump most despises are the things that make Massachusetts such a spectacular place to live. As we say, eds and meds, obviously, a colossal amount of research, great healthcare facilities, incredible educational institutions. We're going to have the president of Assumption University with us at noon, one of so many in this state. Culture, inclusivity, tolerance, the most intolerant president probably of diversity in the history of the United States of America. And you say, this all happened, Marjorie, in 4 months, what he has done. And Harvard is just sort of emblematic of what he seems hell-bent on doing to our state. And even if these lawsuits are won, a lot of the damage is going to remain.
We know it's really too bad, Mr. Taxman, since we are one of the richest states in the United States of America, and we give more money to the federal government than any of the red states which support Donald Trump. It's too bad we can't withhold all the taxes from
Well, it's not just that we give more than the red states. We give much more than we get back.
That's right.
That's right. The federal government.
It's sort of too bad that we just can't withhold those taxes and let them go after, like Alabama, to try to get those taxes back. I mean, you think of it. Kendall Square, the biotech industry that's taken off. We heard Alan Garber on the radio this morning, the president of Harvard. He was talking about how there was this
with Steve Inskeep on NPR.
With Steve Inskeep on NPR, absolutely. That there was this breakthrough prize given to Harvard in these weight loss drugs.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know it either. I mean, I think they should advertise more of the great things they've done over there. This breakthrough prize in gene editing that helps people cure all sorts of diseases. I've said over and over again that a lot of these, the changes in ability to cure diseases like cancer, or certainly treat it so people can live longer lives. A lot of that comes out of research that's done at Harvard. So it's kind of biting off our nose to spite our face, because I guess people don't like the fact that, you got to be really smart to get into Harvard, and I guess they don't like that. I mean,
also look
unless you're, RFK Jr. or
He
Jared
talked
Kushner.
about RFK Jr. used to be really smart. I interviewed him a bunch of times. I think he was on the radio show too. When he was an environmental lawyer,
Yes.
he was a pretty smart guy.
Well,
he
he
just
may have
happens to know nothing about healthcare.
I think the fact that he was Robert F. Kennedy Jr. helped him get into
Probably
Harvard
did.
University.
Can I, one of the interesting things that, by the way, let's just so you can get a sense of the feel. Here is Garber with Steve Inskeep this morning. The question that he's responding to, if you were going to make a warning to other universities, how would you phrase it? Here's Garber.
I would say that we need to be firm in our commitments to what we stand for. And what we stand for, I believe, is education, pursuit of the truth, helping to educate people for better futures. In the end, we're about producing and disseminating knowledge.
I think we could lose a little more energy on
our nation and our world.
Oh my God!
When
Wake
we
up!
Fail.
Oh, there's more. I'm sorry. I thought that was
then
it.
we can
I'm so sorry.
expect to be attacked.
Okay.
So number one,
Oops.
I think we all need to redouble our commitment to the good of the nation and the world.
My
Okay.
apologies. I didn't mean to speak over
Okay,
Alan Garber.
you're right. There need to be a little bit more energy there.
But can I
and
say
more
something that
forceful voice.
he also addressed, I
Yeah.
thought, well this morning,
What?
is, Trump, in his viciousness, is also strategically quite smart. He announces, I think it is over the weekend, that a couple of $1 billion that goes to Harvard is going to go to trade schools. And you say, with the anti-elitism in this country, particularly amongst his supporters, well, wouldn't it be better on trade schools? And by the way, you and I are big supporters of vocational ed and trade schools. And as Garber said, I thought one of his best moments, the $2 billion or whatever it is goes to research into things like healthcare and cancer and weight loss drugs. That money being transferred to trade schools is basically an acknowledgement we're not going to do that anymore. It'll be great for trade schools. It will decimate the research that's been done at these institutions.
Jim, the House just passed a bill that's going to give massive tax breaks, mainly to wealthy people. Maybe they can take a little bit out of that money from tax breaks for people that make $5 million a year, or $10 million a year, or $20 million a year.
It's not about the money, Marjorie, at all. It isn't about the money.
I'm saying it's a ridiculous argument.
It is a ridiculous argument.
It's a ridiculous argument. And the other thing is, I said before, and as Garber said this morning, the research that places like Harvard do are the federal government's priorities. They apply for grants to do the research that the federal government wants them to do, and a lot of it has to do with diseases. Remember Joe Biden's moonshot? Joe Biden's moonshot did not cure cancer, but it made a lot of progress. And so many people have cancer, and so many people we know have cancer that can live with cancer now because of the research done, a lot of it right here. So, if I get cancer, anytime soon, I would like it.
You go to a trade school, they'll fix it for you. So one last thing before we get to your calls at 877-301-8970. Kara Miller mentions in her piece in the Globe, 4 of the 5 top employers in Massachusetts are in healthcare and education. So beyond those people losing their jobs, beyond the fact that researchers are obviously not going to come here, they're going to be lured to other countries, the impact on the local economy is immense.
We're going to get hurt. We're going to get hurt big time. Did you mention this WU statistic about 42,000 jobs in Boston? Are tied to universities. 42,000 jobs. That's a lot in the city of Boston are tied to universities. So it seems like it is aimed at us. I know that he went to Penn. Maybe he wanted to go to Harvard and didn't get in or something. I don't know.
No, he says Wharton's the greatest school in the world. Do you know that I went to the Wharton School for one day? Did I ever told you? As an undergraduate, one day. I lasted, and then I went to liberal arts and then never went to class, and it shows. Let's go to Alan Spencer. You're first on Boston Public Radio. Hey, Al.
Hey, how you doing?
We're good, thank you.
Yes, I just have a question for you, or maybe when you have the governor on.
Yeah.
That maybe Massachusetts could hold back its federal money and, maybe get some other states to do the same and say, well, if you're not giving us money, we're not giving you money.
Listen, I have no idea what the legality is. We will ask. Al, thanks for the call. I would love it, it just as a statement. And I think this is what you were referencing before, that in terms of the trade-off, the federal government does far better in its dealings with Massachusetts in terms of what it receives versus what it sends back, as compared to, for example, Kentucky. And while Kentucky is the Democratic governor, it had Mitch McConnell as the Republican leader of the Senate forever. And as a result, a huge amount of differential. Much more went back to Kentucky than came in from Kentucky.
The blue states that mostly support Democrats fund the United States government. The red states that supported Trump take money, for the most part, from the federal government because they're not as educated.
Do you get the sense that there is a real sense of urgency in terms of the response to, even when the response has been good and appropriate? I don't feel that those who are concerned, and I include you and me in this category, about what Trump's going to do to the state and this country and our international standing, that it's still, to me, too matter of fact. Do you think that's being unfair or
no?
Yeah,
I don't understand why colleges all across the country are not banding together in support of Harvard University. I don't get why news media organizations didn't get together to support the Associated Press when Trump tried to ban them from covering the White House. People forget, the founders talked about the fourth estate being the press, and how important the press was to a free democratic institution. People seem to have forgotten that too. I don't understand why we're all not more in a state of near outrage, but people are. I mean, I think if you listen to you read stuff from a lot of Republicans, they'll say Harvard's a great target. People hate Harvard. Just screw Harvard. Who cares about Harvard? And again, they're looking at the money that they're taking is not mostly to the undergraduates at Harvard University. It's to the research that Harvard does. That's the billions and billions of dollars.
Not allowing international students, if this temporary restraining order doesn't last, is going to affect.
It is, but the big money is to
in research. You're right.
And that's kind of, I think, like I said, it's cutting off your nose to spite your face. I think most of us would like it if we could figure out how to cure some of these dread diseases that people get. John from Westford, thank you for calling.
Hey, John, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, I view Harvard as probably the least inclusive institution in the country, and it was ranked that way by that FIRE organization.
By which? I'm sorry.
They were talking about free speech, John, the FIRE organization. I don't think they were saying it was the least inclusive.
But go ahead.
Well, it was the least of free speech. It's all aspects. For example, when the pro-Palestinian people occupied Wagner Library, it was the faculty that forced the library to stay open or allow them. I mean, the faculty, if I was a Jewish student at a university, I wouldn't express my opinion if my political science teacher is the one leading this pro-Palestinian movement.
Hey, John, I have a question for you. If you're concerned about anti-Semitism at Harvard, are you concerned about Islamophobia? That report came out the same day. Are you concerned about that too?
I read that. Yeah.
Are you?
I totally disagree with it, and I have ties to Harvard. And as far as the research facilities go, they make money as well. And
yeah, but they're hugely dependent on federal money. And, John, part of the problem, with all due respect, and you're an excellent caller, and we love when you call, is this is all premised on the notion that Donald Trump is hell-bent on rooting out anti-Semitism. And as you know, because you're a student of Trump, when he had dinner with Nick Fuentes and Kanye West, he wasn't concerned about anti-Semitism that night, was he? Or did I miss something?
Yeah, I know. I don't know who set that up.
Well, probably he did.
Before Kanye went off the rails and we knew about it.
No, he was off the rails then, and Nick Fuentes has always been off the rails. John,
well, come on,
thanks for your call as always.
Charlottesville, it showed what the president thought about anti-Semitism when people were chanting "Jews will not replace us," and he said there were nice people on both sides. But the thing I think you can argue, and we're going to talk with the Assumption University president later about this, is that there's probably, I think it's fair to say that there's more of a liberal bent at most of these elite institutions, and that there was a little bit too much speech policing, and if you didn't use the right terms for this, you didn't write the right terms for that, you could be canceled. There was kind of an no kind
Remember
of thing.
the book that Harvey Silverglate wrote about 20 years ago? Shadow University,
Yeah.
which was...
That was a lot about Penn.
It was.
Yeah, and talking about how people would get
His
canceled.
co-author was from Penn, actually.
So, and you could say there should be more of a ideological, intellectual difference in opinion at colleges, but that's not what's going on here. I don't think that's a little over-the-top reaction to something that needs to be fixed. Mindy in the car, thank you for calling.
Hello, Mindy.
Yes, hi, Jim and Marjorie.
Hi.
First, I really want to thank you for being media that is not afraid to tell the truth. I think that's very important right now. I just want to get across a couple of other points. I'm
Please.
almost 70. I worked in higher ed for almost my entire career, not at Harvard, but at Tufts and Wellesley and Mass College of Art and Design. And I have never, ever imagined that the government could do something like this to higher ed. And I'm all in favor of schools that are training people to do manual labor, whatever labor. I'm trying to think of the word, like trade schools.
Yeah, sure. Vocational education. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Vocational education. And you don't have to replace higher ed. Needs all kinds of thinkers in this country. And when I heard the person who was on the phone before me, who said, you got to give Jewish students a chance to talk, I'm Jewish. And I was first-generation student, and to say that all Jews support Israel, which is what he was basically saying, and are against Palestinians, is false and anti-Semitic. And I just can't wait for someone to come up with a way that we can do something. Instead of talking like this, I go to protests, social media, but who's going to come up with an idea?
Well, Mindy, as Barack Obama said, others before him, too, elections have consequences, and the American people decided Donald Trump should be the president of the United States, the Republicans should lead the House, the Republicans should lead the Senate, and while I would argue that if they had been honest about their agenda, they probably wouldn't have won those elections as handily as they did. This is what the American people voted for, Republican leadership. And the problem is even the strongest Democrats don't have nearly the power that Trump has, particularly with the courts being, at least in my opinion, as ineffective as they have been. Mindy, thank you for your call. Appreciate it.
Speaking as she did about Jews supporting Israel, how ironic that young couple that was slaughtered the other night outside the Jewish embassy, the meeting that was going on there was about trying to help Gaza and try to get more humanitarian aid to Gaza. That was a group of Jewish people at an embassy. So obviously there are a lot of people who are Jewish who are upset with what's going on in Gaza.
Well, also, I mean, just like Mindy said, the corollary to that is the implication that you hear from a lot of Trump supporters that if you're pro-Palestinian, you are pro-Hamas, which is obviously absurd. It doesn't mean that some don't fall into that category, but sure as hell is not anywhere near a majority. Lyndon Fitchburg, you are next on Boston Public Radio. Thank you much for calling. Hi.
Good morning.
Hi.
I'm calling because I have grave concerns about pulling the research money from Harvard and its affiliates.
So do we.
And the reason I say that is I don't think people have connected the dots. Currently, for example, I have two friends, and I don't know a lot of people, but I have two friends that are on immunotherapy. Two that are on immunotherapy. The cost of that per month is about $30,000+. One was told for his chronic lymphocytic leukemia that he will be on this for the rest of his life, and it is required to actually live. Now, that's not affordable for most people. And so he benefits from a grant through J&J, but I researched it. Those grants are not, that bill is not footed by J&J. It's research dollars through NIH, and his drug is a Harvard medical study in conjunction with Dana-Farber. people don't realize the
Glenn, can I share with you Marjorie
Yes.
Egan and I both listened to Steve Inskeep's interview with Alan Garber this morning, and our reaction, we called each other right after it was over, is exactly the same. Why hasn't he said before what he said here? Instead of this generic, we do all this wonderful research, he was very specific and very compelling, and I agree with you. The messaging on the side of people who care about... Well, he was at the end. He was at the end.
Yeah, but let's get.
Lynn,
let's
thanks
get,
for the call.
Let's go right down the list of the breakthroughs that have come out of Harvard University, Dana-Farber, Brigham Mass
listed
General.
some of them today.
He did, but it was kind of vague, and it was at the end. I mean, they need to be very specific. They need to talk about the trials that have been stopped. Pediatric trials that have been stopped midway through these cruel policies of this government. You got a 3-year-old.
How about that TB? The woman that was on the other day that ran the TB labs. Million people dying around the world. Her research is done.
I think we need stories from the parents of the children in America who've been thrown off these pediatric trials because Trump is in a tizzy about Harvard University. I mean, it's cruel, and it's like going after what we're best at. Is that what we want to? And needless to say, these brilliant people, they're going to find jobs elsewhere, and many of them are going to find jobs outside the country. And as I said before, the next time we need a COVID vaccine, although I guess according to RFK Jr., we don't need the COVID vaccines anymore because you're not going to be able to get them if you're under 65 years old. They will not perhaps come from the United States of America. That's why we got them first, right?
In Cambridge, actually, we did pretty well on the mRNA front. Too, part of the messaging, I mean, Trump's messaging, while often, if not almost always, disingenuous, is just worlds better than the resistance, for lack of an expression, is. Let's face it. I mean, it just is. I mean, for example, the thing we mentioned before, taking these billions of dollars in research money and giving it to trade schools. Can't you see America nodding its head, saying, "Yeah, we do need more trade schools."
Yeah, we do need more.
But Garber, again, I think dealt with that well today, talking about you're essentially
Harvard
ending this research.
University has lousy PR. They need to talk in detail about what they've done.
Well, because until a month ago, you could have found Garber on a milk carton. I mean, he said nothing until all of this Trump. And when you have a platform, I've said it for years, when you have a platform like Harvard University, in my opinion, you use it, even long before Donald Trump.
Okay, we are out of time about this. Coming up, we're going to talk with NBC Sports Boston, Trenni Casey.
Nope, not yet.
We're not?
No, we're continuing this.
Oh, we're continuing this. Who knew? We'll be right back.
Well, I knew, actually. One of us knew.
Listening to Boston Public Radio.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, Titus Burgess. Before experiencing a full evening with the versatile actor at the Umbrella Art Center, experience an afternoon with him right here. He was a standout on the Netflix hit comedy Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, and soon he'll reprise his role as Mary Todd Lincoln in Oh Mary on Broadway. He joins us to talk about it all. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Central Square Theater, presenting Mrs. Warren's Profession by George Bernard Shaw. The mysterious Mrs. Warren built a global empire. Her daughter is shocked to learn how. Opens May 29th. CentralSquareTheater.org. And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its 2025-2026 season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Tipping Point author Malcolm Gladwell, Dr. Anthony Fauci, Ken Burns, and former National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster. BostonSpeakers.org.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Mayor Wu will join us for an hour tomorrow from noon to 1 at the library for Ask the Mayor. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about all things that make Massachusetts great in our estimation, the institutions that train and educate the next leaders of the world's industries, medical research, social values, tolerance, and the threat they're under with the Trump administration. You know what's incredible about how our topic at the beginning of the show was, you worried that Massachusetts is going to lose what makes it great? And in classic fashion, not one person has responded to the question, but we are concerned about losing what makes Massachusetts great, whether you are or not. Our number is 877-301-8970.
Well, you already mentioned we have the highest percentage of college graduates in the nation.
I did not.
Yeah, but we do, and that's one of the reasons I think that we are a wealthy state, because if you tend to be highly educated, you tend to be able to make more money.
Well, speaking of statistics, I don't think this is in Kara Miller's piece, a former colleague of ours in the Globe. 57% of the Kennedy School's students,
Foreign.
international students.
Yeah.
Remember we did Deval Patrick's class a few weeks ago? Overwhelmingly. You know what percentage of Northeastern's whole student body? I think Northeastern is one of the largest colleges in America. You know what percentage of their student body is as high as 38%? International students. Think about the impact, assuming this temporary restraining order is lifted by the court. And even if it isn't lifted by the court, as we asked those two international students, Leo, was his name Gurdon, the Swedish young man, and Abdullah Sail, I believe his name was, who's the co-president of the student body, would you advise your friends back in Pakistan or in Sweden to come to school here? And they gave the obvious answer. It's pretty hard to say you're safe and secure here.
Well, you know, Boston Axios was talking this morning about 44% of U.S. unicorn company startups valued over $1 billion are founded or co-founded by immigrants. And they also point out that Harvard ranks as one of America's top schools for educating startup founders, ranking third for undergrads, second for grad students, and first for MBAs. And, you know, a lot of these kids, as we said before, are foreigners who are not going to come here anymore.
One, before we get back to the calls, Jim from Marblehead texts, I'm on the medical faculty at Harvard. I received an email from a promising young physician from Iran looking for an opportunity to do research here in New England. I told him for the time being, he'd be better off looking for positions in Canada and in Europe. Linda in Boston, welcome to the show. Hi.
Thank you. Hi. How you guys doing?
We're good. Thank you for calling.
Good. Okay. I have a quick point and a request.
Sure.
Okay. So I don't know the facts, but my guess is that this whole business with Harvard is probably because years ago,
I know what
Donald Trump applied to Harvard and did not get in.
Okay.
I don't know.
We don't know. He
we
did
don't
get
know.
into the Wharton School, which is not chopped liver,
I know.
Linda,
I know.
I should say. So go ahead.
And did you hear the dean of the Wharton School recently said that Trump was the dumbest student he'd ever had?
I really doubt that the dean of the Wharton School said that, with all due respect, Linda. We'll check that out, though, and if you're right, I'll apologize. He just said the dumbest student they ever had?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, we'll check it out. What's your request?
I have a request. Would you two please do a segment, including elected officials, of those who voted for this clown and regret it?
Well, can I make a suggestion?
John King.
Linda, we have John King from CNN at 1 o'clock, and John just got back from Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania, and two of the three people in his piece with whom we will speak to him about voted for Trump, and you'll be interested to hear what they said when he asked if they still supported him, despite the fact that one thinks he's losing his job because of Trump, and the other one thinks that while tariffs will benefit the economy way down the line, it could end up shuttering his business in the short term. So stick around for John at 1 o'clock. Linda, thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
We should mention this. This is Karen Miller's piece about Massachusetts losing with Trump cracking down on everything that makes us a wealthy, prosperous state. The guy that used to be Jeffrey Flyer, who's a big deal at the Harvard Medical School,
he was the dean
there.
Yeah.
He talks about how he knows a local hospital. He didn't say which one, but he said 80% of the doctors who provide patient care there are from abroad, and lots of them are from Turkey. And we don't have enough primary care physicians around. We don't have enough physicians in general, so they try to make it easier up at the State House.
We just passed a law here.
That's right.
Yeah.
But he talked about how a lot of these Turkish physicians, needless to say, after watching what happened to Rumeysa Öztürk, who was dragged off the street Turkish, exactly, they are extremely, extremely nervous. So in many ways, we are just, like I said, for the third time, cutting off our nose to spite our face.
Well, by the way, you were late, even though you heard the interview. When the kid who was co-president of the student body, Abdullah Sail, was on the show on Friday, he is a sophomore, coming back obviously as a junior. And I said, even if it turns out that Harvard wins this, I don't think they'd filed the litigation yet, but if they sue and they win this litigation, would you come back? And he was undecided if he'd return, even if Harvard had won, were to win.
You'd be afraid of getting deported, not
or
back
snatched
to your own country, but to some other Sudan or something. I mean, the places that the president has chosen to send people.
Jim in South Carolina, you have 60 seconds. Take it away.
Hey, listen, I think you're all just missing the point on this.
What is
that is, you are assuming that Trump is making his decisions based on reason. And
No,
it's
we're not.
It's based on feelings. And it's feelings that he's going, well, you can't reason with someone who wants either has a vendetta or wants revenge, and playing to reason is really not going to be a major factor in any decisions that Trump makes.
Jim, you don't think when he was speaking about trophy wives at West Point graduation last week, he was using his powers of reason? No? Al Capone?
That's exactly my point.
It is exactly
Speaking
the
about
point.
the Olympics, speaking about the Olympics on Memorial Day.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Jim, thank you.
But, I mean,
Appreciate
his
call.
motives don't really matter to me because I think he's been unhinged for years. It's what he's doing that is really quite frightening, and he's doing it with such alacrity. It's really quite
What is
startling.
it, 120 some days, 4 months. Boy, there's a lot of action in 4 months, I should say.
That's right. Okay. Coming up, we are not going to be speaking to Trenni Casey. We'll talk with her later.
Noon.
But we are, and this is going to be a perfect segue. We're talking with Greg Weiner, the Worcester College's University, I should say, Assumption University from Worcester. We're going to talk with him about what's going on in these college campuses, about Trump's alleged crackdown and other things. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
The world takes you outside your borders and connects you with the most important events happening all across this big blue marble.
We introduce you to memorable people whose stories will stay with you for a lifetime. I'm Marco Werman.
And I'm Carolyn Beeler, global news and inspiring voices that will keep you on top of the world.
Listen each weekday.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked #1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday. And Boston Children's Museum with 100 Acre Wood, a Winnie the Pooh experience. Opening May 30th. Visitors can return to the 100 Acre Wood with everyone's favorite silly old bear. Tickets at bostonchildrensmuseum.org.
Welcome back to our, this is not hour two.
Hour one.
We screwed things up here.
Screwed things up.
Let me start all over again. Thank God the show isn't live. Oh, actually it is. In any case, I am Jim Browdy, that much I know, and she is Marjorie Egan, and we are live at the Boston Public Library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. Back here tomorrow with Mayor Wu. The mayor joins us from 12 to 1, taking our questions and yours. Since Donald Trump took office for a second time, he set his sights on higher education. We've been checking with leaders of colleges and universities here in New England, Wesleyan, Mount Holyoke, and today, Assumption University in Worcester. We're joined now live at the library by Assumption's president, Greg Weiner. He had a really interesting piece in the New York Times a month or so ago called "Colleges Have to Be Much More Honest with Themselves." President Weiner, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks very much for having me.
So Jim and I were trying to remember. We went up to Assumption University for something. We can't remember what it was.
It was our first public event when we started in radio 25 years ago.
Well, I do remember driving up there and going past all these gorgeous houses in Worcester and thinking, wow, Worcester has really improved since the last time I visited
That's
Worcester.
a nice start, Marjorie.
Well, it's true.
Had quite a renaissance.
Yeah, it has had quite a renaissance. So for people that don't know about Assumption, give us an idea what's going on up there.
Sure. We're an institution of Catholic liberal education, sponsored by the Augustinians of the Assumption. We've been around
like
since
the Pope?
1904. He is an Augustinian,
Yeah.
and not with the Assumptionist congregation specifically, but have about 1,700 undergraduates, a few hundred graduate students, and I think we are providing a terrific education there.
What does a Jewish guy doing running a Catholic university? That would be you, by the way.
Well, don't say that too loud or my mother's going to hear. I actually think there are a lot of compatibilities between not just ritual practice, but also the intellectual traditions, the focus on the need for both faith and reason, the love of learning for its own sake, which is something that I think in our current higher ed environment is getting inadequate attention.
How worried are you about the future of academic freedom in general? I don't mean an assumption. We'll narrow things down later after 4 months of Trump 2.0, President Weiner.
Well, I was worried about the future of academic freedom before 4 months of this administration, and I think we need to recognize that more than one thing can be true at the same time. One thing that can be true is that there is government interference that is inappropriate with a sector of civil society that has always been a conservative belief that it's important to have independent civil society that stands between the individual and the state. It's also true that colleges do not have a perfect record on academic freedom themselves, and at the same time we are engaging with these public debates, I think we need to be willing to take a hard look at ourselves.
Well, that's what you said in your piece, that the colleges need to be more honest with themselves. That was the headline, a piece you wrote in the New York Times. So what did you mean? Do you mean talking they, them, Latinx? What were you talking about?
No, I wasn't talking about any one particular issue. I will tell you, I was my first tawdry career. Not to say this is my second tawdry career, but I had a tawdry past as a political consultant in D.C. And when I always told clients, when you think you only have a PR problem, you have a substantive problem. It's very rarely the case that there's simply an image that is utterly misaligned with reality. The reality is that college campuses are considerably left of center of the American mainstream. Now, one thing that I think is unfortunate in the current debate is that Ivy League institutions educate about 1/2% of all undergraduates in this country. Mm-hmm. I think some of the most important work, and I think some of the most even-handed work of the simple work of teaching, learning, and discovering is happening at places like Assumption that don't have, may not be at the very top of someone's list of rankings, but where honest teaching, learning, and again, discovery take place.
Going back to the headline, colleges have to be more honest with themselves, and we'll talk about some more of the content in a second. Is that simply to improve what colleges and universities, what kind of education they provide, or is it at least in part to counter Trump's assault on higher education?
Well, I think it's both. I think regardless of who's in office, there's something unique about the professions in America, which is that they are self-regulating. For the most part, and regardless of who's in office, I think we need to have an honest conversation about how are we holding ourselves accountable to our own values.
You know what? When I hear, because to me, and I've been a reporter all my life, things have changed dramatically from the day we had regular, normal Republicans like George Bush or his son Bush or Charlie Baker, that was the governor of Massachusetts. When I hear people say that colleges are left of the American public, I think you don't hear the other thing, that the Republican Party now is extremely far from the American public. If you look at climate, you look at guns, you look at choice, you look at LGBTQ issues, you look at Medicaid, you look at, which is very popular, taxing for the rich, very unpopular. Trump's Republican Party is almost doing everything that Americans don't want. So how does that fit in?
Well, colleges should be engaged in the search for truth, as we heard President Garber say earlier. And in my view, liberal education at its very finest involves a retreat from the immediate to focus on the enduring. So it's not clear to me at all that colleges are the natural home of political activity or political protest or political analysis. I think we would do much better, again, in a spirit of self-regulation, to say, let's focus on the kind of education that we're providing.
But they're a place of the freest of speech, potentially, and that's what those demonstrations are at least intended to be.
Potentially was, I would say.
Well, I saw you in a CBS News interview. You said you were offended by demonstrations last spring. I don't know.
Absolutely.
What did you mean?
I meant rattling the gates at Columbia as Jewish students were trying to come in. I don't have a single Jewish friend with college-age children who did not worry that spring about whether it was physically safe to send their children back to college. I don't know of a single one who has not said, take that Star of David and hold it in your and put it in your shirt. And these are serious. These are serious issues, and I think people tend to forget that the protests erupted. The protests nominally over the war in Gaza erupted as cheers for an attack, for a rampage of murder and rape and the most atrocious violence.
You're talking about October 7th? I don't think that, with all due respect, President, I don't think that's fair. I mean, I know a lot of people who are demonstrating, and I have to say, I don't know one who was there celebrating October 7th. And in fact,
Jim, with due respect, I would encourage you to go back and look at the record of what was happening on campuses the afternoon and evening of October 7th.
Well, I just don't, I don't see this. And so is your position that because of, first of all, how did you feel about Columbia's response to Trump post those activities on their campus? Well, we call it capitulation. You may not like that word, but whatever it is, $400 million was threatened. They cut a deal with Trump, and at least as far as we know, the $400 million has not been restored. So I'm not quite clear what Columbia got from cutting a deal with the Trump administration.
Well, it's not my place to advise Columbia, nor do I know the details of what happened behind the scenes. What I would say generally about this administration or any other's reaction to higher education is there are things that are within the ambit of federal law, and there are things that are not. And certainly, Title VI of the Civil Rights Act protects against discrimination on the basis of religion or national origin, just the same way Title IX of the Education Amendments protects against discrimination on the basis of gender.
One last thing about that. Did you hear President Garber this morning? You just heard the sound that we played?
I heard the sound that you played.
Yeah, one of the things that troubled me, and Marjorie and I had this discussion before, is if I remember correctly, the report on anti-Semitism that came out, I think, the exact same day as the report on Islamophobia. And I've heard at least a couple of Garber interviews lately, and it seems to me that intentionally he's focused on his legitimate concerns about anti-Semitism on his campus, and I haven't heard him mention concerns. And to me, that's part of the notion that if you say the right thing, and this is my read on this, Donald Trump will be nicer to you than he will be otherwise. Isn't it fair for someone who's done two reports to give them relatively equal time?
I don't want to give President Garber PR advice. What I would say is if Harvard has identified a problem with Islamophobia, that is absolutely a problem and absolutely a problem that should be addressed. I would also say respectfully that again, there was in my mind an unquestionable eruption of anti-Jewish hatred on a lot of campuses. And there is a double standard, frankly, that applies to the Jews, where when there's anti-Jewish hatred, it must be qualified with, well, there's this, there's that. These are discrete problems, and they should both be dealt with in a serious way.
We're talking to Greg Weiner, the president of Assumption University in Worcester.
So you said that that colleges have to be more honest with themselves. So what do you think? What's your prescription? What should colleges be doing? And you mentioned not discussing current events if they're irrelevant to the coursework, although I think that'd be hard to do. But what are you talking about?
I will tell you that I was a professor of political science. I taught American politics and American political thought. People never believe me when I say this, but I never once discussed current event. I don't think those are I think what colleges, particularly liberal arts ones, should be in the business of doing is educating students about ideas and then trusting them to make choices as citizens. I don't think that colleges should be thinking in terms of capitulation or everyone must stick together in against one administration or the other. The question in my mind, I've on other occasions, written dozens of op-eds and public essays that have been critical of this administration. They're not calling and asking for my advice. They're certainly not taking it. So what we need to do, in addition to engaging with political threats, is simply engage in the honest work of examining ourselves. That needs to be true regardless of whether there are external threats. And I would argue politically that simply going into a posture of complete denial about something that is clear to virtually everyone who has, so I shouldn't say to virtually everyone, to many, many people who have studied at, taught at, particularly what we conventionally call the elite universities in America, there's a form of gaslighting there that just, I'm sorry, it's just bad politics.
And like what?
When we say that there are, as has frequently been said, that the entire industry needs to band together and deny the existence of any problems, or this is not the time to discuss problems. The reality is those problems exist, and owning up to them does not mean self-flagellation. It doesn't mean.
But what's the gaslighting that you're talking about? Give me some examples.
I hear this in meetings of college presidents all the time. Don't acknowledge that there's any problems with political bias on campuses at all.
Oh, okay. So you're talking about professors and administrators talking among themselves about the perspective of the teachers that are teaching the classes. That's what you're talking about. But you're not talking about specific things that you can mention that people have said that are lies.
I'm sorry, with respect to...
Well, you said gaslighting, and gaslighting to me means telling a lie.
Well, gaslighting to me, the sense in which I'm using it is denying a reality that is clear to so many people.
Yeah.
I think colleges and universities, which do enormous good in this country, and as you mentioned, are not only educators but agents of innovation and discovery. I think we'd be in a much better position with the American public if we could simply say we do wonderful work and we've got some problems we need to work on. That's not a difficult thing to do.
You know, a couple of months ago, early in the second Trump administration, we spoke to Jeff Sonnenfeld, who's now at Yale School of Management, and he said, I shouldn't be telling you this, but 50 college presidents or provosts are meeting this week, and this is after we complained to him that there seemed to be virtually no unity. It was every person, every entity for itself. And I don't want to read you wrong. My sense of one of the reasons why so many colleges are either in retreat or in trouble is because there hasn't been a collective response. The same with law firms. We saw two of the law firms that have fought got permanent injunctions in the last week against the Trump administration, while Paul Weiss is not only on bended knee, along with there are 8 other firms to the tune of $950 million of, quote, pro bono assistance. Their partners are leaving. I felt the same way about law firms not sticking together. Should universities join forces, and presidents like you who are concerned about academic freedom and also the other things you mentioned in your op-ed, should there not be a unified response from people like you?
I'd be very eager to join a unified response of the type you just described, which is to say, colleges and universities, the higher education sector is an independent sector of civil society. It should remain so. It should obey the law, but remain independent. And at the same time, we recognize there are problems that we need to deal with. I will say I have seen a lot of joint letters, and I've been asked to sign a lot of them. I've not seen one yet that tried to strike that balance.
You know, one of the things that really worries me, and we talk about this a lot, President Weiner, in terms of the press, is that self-censorship seems to be on the rise, and we've cited examples. Ruth Marcus was honest enough before she left the Washington Post in her piece in the New Yorker to cite two columns she had written where she had muted her criticism, I think in one case of her boss, Jeff Bezos, and the other of Donald Trump. One of the things I worry about is that colleges, when I heard the Garber interview this morning, I thought part of the Garber interview was for Donald Trump, is to hear, we're not so bad here, we're going to try to do some of the things that you suggest. And by the way, almost echoing some of the things you say there, and it seems to me that there's a naivete in that sort of message when confronted with someone like Donald Trump, where I think every example I can pick is those who tried to cut a deal got destroyed somewhere down the line, whether it's Tim Cook, Columbia University, whoever it is. Do you disagree with that?
No one has asked me to strike a deal, and I'm not particularly interested in doing so. What I do think is that colleges and universities have a responsibility to our own values, and due respect, self-censorship has been practiced on college campuses for decades.
You mean vis-a-vis conservative points of view?
That is unquestionably the case.
Like,
I'm saying
like
this
what? Like what?
So let me say that I think my street cred on this is reasonably good. I worked in Democratic politics for over 20 years.
You worked for Bob Curry, who was
Yeah.
one of the great Democratic senators of our time. Before he went to the news school, I should say. I'm curious to know how he'd be handling this, but go ahead. Go ahead.
He hasn't told me.
Okay.
But with respect to, it was not long ago that there were mass protests against the invitation of conservative speakers to college campuses.
Yeah.
So this is not.
So they get invited, then there's a big protest, and sometimes they end up speaking, and sometimes they don't.
Right. But
I mean,
but there's
Catholic colleges have been quite notorious for rejecting speakers, like Barack Obama at Notre Dame.
Condoleezza Rice.
So it's not on one side. I mean, you reject the President of the United States, that's a pretty big statement.
Well, Catholic colleges have certain specific commitments that might complicate that, but I am all for even-handed sharing of ideas openly.
Yeah.
What I'm against is denying the simple fact that there has been for years a lot of self-censorship, and there was no concern about academic freedom during that time. In fact, quite the opposite. I've read many articles that academic freedom was a tool of preserving the current system or whatever else. I think our commitment to academic freedom, which I wholeheartedly endorse, would be more credible, much more credible, if we could acknowledge we don't have a pure record on it ourselves, and we need to get better at it.
But I guess, as I just said, my problem is that both sides do it. And that's the difficulty. And when you reject Condoleezza Rice, who was the former Secretary of State at Boston College, big protest over that, or you reject the President of the United States because he's pro-choice at Notre Dame, and most Catholics, as you know, are pro-choice, and most Americans certainly are pro-choice. That's kind of really blatant than if you're talking about rejecting a speaker like Nick Fuentes or something.
Well, I think with respect, there might be some false dichotomies there. Nick Fuentes would not be welcome on our campus at any time. I don't think he's a serious
So who are you talking about that was rejected?
I'm not sure I could give you a name, but this is, Google would take less than a second to produce dozens of examples of conservative speakers who are, we got in the habit of using words that they make people unsafe, uncomfortable, and so forth. And that's the reality is that's part of higher education's job.
You know, we only have 1 minute left, but I'm trying to think. I'm focused on Garber because I heard the thing this morning. Virtually even the most outspoken college presidents who've been fighting back against Trump have acknowledged at least a piece of what you're writing about in the New York Times. Have they not? None of them are saying that we are
not enough
perfect
conservatives.
As we are, right?
Not enough conservatives on campus. I think people acknowledge that, don't they? I think they do.
I can't speak for what everyone has said. I think there are two separate issues. One is how you engage effectively politically with, or whether you can, with the current administration, which I do not think, I said in the New York Times piece, do not think should use the cudgel of funding to do things that are otherwise not within the jurisdiction of federal law. And there can be an honest conversation with ourselves about our own values. So to whatever extent those statements have been made, I would suggest they're fairly recent phenomena. And they would have, the argument for academic freedom now, which we need to get 110% behind, would have been more credible had they been made before.
President Weiner, it's a pleasure to meet you. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for coming here. Speaking with Greg Weiner, who's president of Assumption University in Wister. And we thank you very much for taking the time to come speak with us. Coming up after the new news, we continue our series of conversations. Oh, we're talking with Trenni Casey, actually, because we're out of order. Trenni Casey is going to talk about Jim Browdy's investigative reporting down in Provincetown.
That's not true. I did not do
at the little shop on there by Jordon Hudson's mother. And we're also going to talk about a figure skating taboo is broken. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
It's not over yet. More smart conversation about community issues up ahead with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio, right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And North Shore Music Theater, presenting the Broadway musical Waitress, with new music by singer-songwriter Sarah Bareilles. On stage at Bill Henney's North Shore Music Theater from June 3rd through June 15th. Ticket information at nsmt.org. Discover the art, life, and enduring impact of the renowned Chinese-American painter Tyrus Wong, the creative force behind Bambi's animation. Watch American Masters, Tyrus, tonight at 9 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 2 of BPR, live from the Boston Public Library. We're continuing our series of interviews with New England area college presidents facing huge federal pressure from Trump on a number of fronts. Today we're joined by Greg Weiner. He's president of Assumption University. He argues colleges need to be more honest with themselves.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then down and dirty talk about summer travel with PBS legend Rick Steves. He's hot off trips to London, Prague, Barcelona, where tourist-weary locals have been spraying obnoxious visitors with squirt guns. Did Rick get caught in the crossfire? Tune in to find out all that, plus two more things ahead on the second hour of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The Trump administration is attempting to cut off about $100 million worth of remaining federal contracts with Harvard University, according to a senior administration official. It's the latest salvo in the administration's dispute with the Ivy League school, the oldest higher education institution in this country. NPR's Morning Edition spoke with Harvard University President Alan Garber about the legal battle against the administration's executive actions and funding cuts.
Why cut off research funding? Sure, it hurts Harvard, but it hurts the country because, after all, the research funding, it's not a gift. The research funding is given to universities and other research institutions to carry out work that the federal government designates as high priority work. It is work that they want done.
Separately, NPR and 3 Colorado public radio stations filed suit this morning in federal court against the Trump White House over the president's executive order purportedly barring the use of congressionally appropriated funds for NPR and PBS. Federal health officials say the COVID vaccines are no longer being recommended for healthy pregnant women or children. Here's NPR's Rob Stein.
The Department of Health and Human Services posted a video on X announcing the decision to remove healthy pregnant people and children from the list of those who should get routine vaccination against COVID. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was flanked by National Institutes of Health Director Jay Bhattacharya and Food and Drug Administration Commissioner Martin McCary in announcing the decision.
I couldn't be more pleased to announce that as of today, the COVID vaccine for healthy children and healthy pregnant women has been removed from the CDC recommended immunization schedule.
The decision was made without the usual input from independent advisors. Rob Stein, NPR News.
In England, local authorities say 4 people remain hospitalized after a minivan plowed into crowds of soccer fans who are celebrating Liverpool's Premier League championship. A man's been arrested, but NPR's Fatima Al-Kassab reports the incident's not being treated as an act of terrorism.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer says the whole country stands with the city of Liverpool after a car rammed into crowds at Liverpool Football Club's victory parade.
Well, scenes of joy turned to utter horror and devastation, and my thoughts and the thoughts of the whole country are with all of those that are affected.
More than 24 people were injured, including several children. The Prime Minister said he is being kept updated with the police investigation. Police are questioning a 53-year-old white British man who is believed to be the driver of the car. Fatima Al-Kassab, NPR News, London.
From Washington, this is NPR News.
Good afternoon. From the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston, I'm Henry Santoro. Boston police say a man shot himself in the foot while trying to take a police officer's gun near Mass General Hospital this morning. Boston Police Commissioner Michael Cox says the man, whose name was not released, attacked the officer working a paid detail near 265 Cambridge Street, happened shortly before 9 a.m. Cox, who stressed the investigation was still in its early stages, says the man approached the uniformed officer, knocked the officer's hat off, and as he tried to take the officer's gun, he was shot in the foot. It's an injury that Cox said is non-life-threatening. Cox said the man who attacked the police officer appeared to be having a mental health crisis. Dozens of officers responded to the incident, and traffic was disrupted for hours. Things are back to normal, and an investigation is underway. The Trump administration says it's time to stop doing business with Harvard altogether, which means Trump is telling all federal agencies to terminate any existing contracts with the university or transfer them to vendors as soon as possible. Notification is according to a letter signed by Josh Gruenbaum, an official at the U.S. General Services Administration, which oversees federal contracts. Gruenbaum is a leading member of the Trump administration's anti-Semitism task force, which initially led the government's intense pressure campaign against Harvard. This move represents yet another financial blow to the university after the Trump administration moved to cancel nearly $3 billion in grants and contracts. Much of that money was destined for biomedical research. We're at 75 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance. Progressive is looking for individuals in a variety of career fields who want to help build a culture of inclusiveness. More information, including application, at progressive.com/careers.
He's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. Thank you, and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
That was very impressive.
Very
Marjorie.
impressive. I spilled my
coffee. She got her headset on, I would say, a quarter of a second before the segment started. She is an incredible woman.
That's right.
And by the way, had she gotten her headset
athlete
on earlier, she would have said, Boston Mayor Michelle will be with us tomorrow to take your questions and ours from noon to 1. You meant to say that, correct?
I did mean to say that.
And she also meant to say that Rick Steves will be with us at the bottom of the hour, zooming in. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jim.
And we are joined now, this is my part of the library, by Trenni Casey. She's an anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston and a BPR contributor. Hello there, Trenni.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Rick Steves. I can't wait to listen in the car. I love him.
I know, and we'll find out how it is for Americans traveling overseas in this particular hot political moment.
Well, you know what's interesting, particularly with him? What he's told us in the past, he's practically the only tour guide who tells his tour leader who tells his tour guides to talk about politics, as opposed to most of them who say avoid politics at all costs. So it'll be interesting to hear what he has to say. In any case, Trenni, it's good to see you.
So let's start with this great story about this new taboo has been broken in dancing, figure skating dancing. We got the sound from these figure skaters. Gabrielle, why'd you look at me so surprised?
No, I'm not surprised. I love this story.
Oh, okay.
So do I.
Okay, here's figure skaters Gabriella Papadakis and Madison Hubble joking around in a post. They're the two skaters on an ice interview. Art on Ice, interview about Papadakis lifting Hubble in a future competition.
To be fair, we've tried both options. I've tried lifting her, but we said that we needed a bit more than 3 weeks for me to learn how to lift.
It's a future, yeah. If we do Art on Ice 2026, Gabby, it will feature a lift where Gabby lifts me.
So this is two women doing ice dancing. It's not a guy and a girl. It's two women.
It's remarkable, and it's a sea change in a sport that hasn't changed much, over the decades. So ice dancing has always been defined by the International Olympic Committee and by most countries except for Canada. Canada is the only country so far to have changed their definition. It is usually one man and one woman. And ice dancing is a little different than pairs, right? So ice dancing, there isn't the big jumps. There are some lifts, as you just heard him mention, but not like the big ones, right? And Canada decided, well, this is silly. Why don't we move with the times? There's no reason that two women or two men can't dance together. It is art. It is dancing. It is interpretation. It's often lovingly looking into each other's eyes, and it's dance on ice. And so they lobbied the Olympic Committee of Canada, and Canada accepted the change. And so now two women are dancing together, and I'm sure at some point we'll probably see two men dancing together. And there's no reason that
Do you think we will see two men?
I mean, why not, right? Like, I guess I look at it as, it almost surprises me that it's two women that are dancing together first versus two men, just for the simple fact that, I don't know, I guess I just feel like a lot of athletic movement and change is often spearheaded by male athletes and not female athletes, although maybe this is more comfortable for people to watch, two women versus two men. But everyone said it's beautiful, it's fantastic. They just competed, I believe it was either Sweden or Switzerland. I think Switzerland, because there were some French comments in there. One
of them is French. That's why there's some French comments in there.
And French-Canadian, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, French-Canadian. And that the response was overwhelmingly positive. The reason this has not happened before is because, like so many other things, they worry about homophobia, they worry how it's interpreted, and they have to, sort of fight to change things. But I guess I was surprised that this hadn't happened earlier. When I saw it, I was like, that just makes a lot of sense. Like, who cares? If you're good and you're an athlete and you are pairs and you dance together and you skate together, who cares what your gender is?
And by the way, there's another reason why some are supporting this, not just because it's an enlightened, maybe 2025 view. I was unaware of the fact that there are tons of women ice dancers and very few
male
men. And they talk about in this great piece in the Washington Post by Les Carpenter. Carpenter writes about the fact that often when a man ice dancer, a champion, is auditioning women, there could be 100 women ice dancers who are auditioning to be his partner, and it's almost impossible for a woman to find a man. And so this is also a practical reality. But they also say, which I guess I knew, but I never thought about, unlike, as you say, what's the other thing called pairs?
Yes,
which
pairs.
is mostly an athletic
That's
kind of
more
thing.
athletic
This
than-
is more the story, the romance,
Yes.
the whatever, the drama kind of thing. And obviously
The
some countries are
theatrics.
uncomfortable.
It's more
Yeah,
theatrical.
exactly. Having said that, I watched a little video. I mean, this is really...
It's gorgeous.
It is beautiful. And they're, by the way, one at least is an Olympic champion.
Yes.
I think both may be. I'm not sure. So these are not second-tier skaters.
No.
They're some of the best in the world.
And
that
there's some, I
decided to
think
do
they
this.
both do pair skating with a male, and
They did,
just,
yeah.
they wanted to try this, and they liked how they worked together. Like, I guess I don't, but maybe I also don't have a problem with how anyone lives their life, so maybe that's why I don't have an issue with it. If it's top of the game of whatever game it is, who cares how it's presented?
Are you kidding? It's lucky they don't get federal funding. They'd be shut
I
down
was
in 2
just gonna
seconds.
say.
Oh, I know.
Exactly right. So can we go from a pairs?
Yeah, I can't imagine this is, by the way, going to be. Like I said, Canada's the only country so far to sanction this.
It's years till we get there.
Yeah, it's years till it happens here, which is so sad. By
You
the
know,
way.
speaking of moving away from a dual thing, a pair thing, this guy Lewis Pugh, who I never heard of until this
the
past
swimmer.
week, the guy swam. I think it took 12 days, a couple hours on average a day to swim around Martha's Vineyard, shark-infested water, 47 degrees on average.
Because he did not wear a wetsuit.
And he did not wear a wetsuit. And the only thing I'm sorry I didn't mention this to one of our colleagues. This guy has done this for to highlight environmental issues, including at the North Pole. And there's a photograph that unfortunately I didn't ask to have put up, where there's a huge glacier right behind him. as it is really beautiful stuff. Tell people about the Martha's Vineyard thing.
So the reason that he did this is an outdoor endurance swimmer, and this year is the 50th anniversary of the release of the Jaws movie, which, at the time, Steven Spielberg and I forget the writer who wrote the book.
Peter Benchley.
Thank you, Peter Benchley, had no idea that Jaws would make everyone afraid of sharks, and so much so that both of them gave pretty significant sums to conservation.
Can I interrupt
sharks.
you a second?
Yeah.
We did a segment on this the other day. One woman called and says, 50 years later, I still won't go in the bathtub. I'm sorry.
I mean, I remember, obviously I was a little older when I saw it for the first time, but I rewatched it. I was like, wow, this really is. I mean, it is still terrifying, even though it's like a mechanical shark or whatnot.
Yeah.
So this guy who has done a lot of environmental awareness through his swimming wanted to swim around Martha's Vineyard because that's where Jaws takes place, to show that we are one with the sharks, that we shouldn't be afraid of them, that if we respect their habitat, they will respect us. And so he circumnavigated, is that the right word? Went around the island of Martha's Vineyard, which is 62.1 or 62.2 miles. He wasn't able to do it continuously because the water temperature is so cold, and he wanted to do it without a wetsuit, without anything.
Can you imagine?
I can't.
No wetsuit, 47 degrees.
I swam in a wetsuit for my triathlon in a lake that was like 72 degrees. Like, no, I could not imagine. Because also a wetsuit gives you some protection, some buoyancy, all these different things.
You see tons of surfers in wetsuits.
And he said, so he had like a route that he was going to do every day for 12 days. So it ended up taking him 24 hours over the course of 12 days. Some days, though, he would barely even get like a kilometer in, and the waves and the cold and the salt water that he was taking in was so much that he'd have to not finish his route for the day, come back and add more the next day. So some days he may have only swam for 45 or 50 minutes, but other days he swam for hours in the ocean. I cannot, if none of you have ever done an open water swim, I cannot stress to you how difficult that is, especially when you're taking on water in your face and the wind is blowing, so you're going against, at times, a current instead of with a current. This is an incredible athletic feat.
By the way, the 47 degrees in and of itself.
Oh my God.
24 hours of swimming.
That's what people go in. 47 degrees is have you ever done
those
the
ice
sauna?
Plunges
Yeah, the
things,
ice. That's an ice plunge. You're supposed to go in it for 30 seconds, not 3 hours.
I'm really disappointed in you, by the way, Marjorie, on this topic. It's pretty obvious to me, knowing you as I do, that you have not looked at any photographs of Mr. Pugh.
I have not looked at any photographs.
I mean,
of Mr.
he's a
Pugh.
very
fine-looking.
He is a very
swimmers
fit,
tend to be
very fit gentleman.
Quite fit.
He's not just fit. He is a he is a good-looking man.
How old? I forgot how old.
Right now.
Yeah, I was going to say. I think he's middle-aged. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, Marjorie
55.
has to stop the interview because she's going to be checking out.
Now she's doing it.
I'm looking up.
So, Trenni, I want to move on to something that I realized after I told Marjorie what angle I wanted to do on this. I realized as soon as she said yes, I realized
you want to talk about something else?
I do this every week with you, and I'm going to do it for the fourth week in a row.
Oh my God!
So, I'm obsessed. See.
I don't know that I've seen interviews with him, but I guess I didn't. You have to show me afterwards.
Guy.
Yeah, very handsome.
Okay, Marjorie won't be part of this now. So I am obsessed with Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark.
Yep.
Okay, and we've talked about them a lot. And the thing I wanted to mention today was not the foul and not the aggravated foul, whatever it's called.
Flagrant.
But
Flagrant
Clark has an injury. And she's out for 2 weeks.
So and
here's what my younger daughter really wanted to go see her play at the Garden in July.
Yeah.
And the only reason we're not going, I feel horrible because I like to think I'm a good father. It was $1,000 for 2 tickets.
Oh God!
And I said,
just to get in the door.
Yeah, well, for good, decent seats. Yeah,
okay,
I mean, but the worst seats were $150. They were not cheap. And I said, I really, I can't justify spending $1,000 for. And she was fine. My kid's fine. It's probably bad mouthing me behind my back.
Yeah.
But
she's probably saying you don't love her. You never do anything that you care about.
You
It's fine.
every place she plays is sold out.
Yeah.
We're all saying we love the WNBA. It's not just Reese and Clark and Beckers and whatever. But I would be totally devastated had I bought tickets and she didn't make it.
Tomorrow night. I believe it's either tonight or tomorrow night that it may actually be tonight. That the Sun play the Fever in Connecticut.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're playing, and she's not going to play.
So I guess my question, which is my question of the week, which I promise I'll stop asking at some point, when we less collectively try to make the case, which I hope we do, is that the WNBA as a product is more than Reese and Beckers, and that's the UConn woman who's a rookie.
Yeah, Paige Beckers.
And Clark. On the other hand, when I had the reaction I had to what if I had bought tickets, led me to believe that maybe we're aggrandizing the league more than we should.
But let me flip that for you. Let's say your daughter really also loves the NBA, and you bought tickets to see the Warriors play the Celtics.
And Steph Curry wasn't
and
there.
Steph Curry and Jason Tatum weren't going to play.
That's a very good point.
You would be so mad. And not because you don't
response.
like the NBA, but just because you always want to see the best players perform. If you bought a ticket to see the Patriots and
Tom Brady
and
wasn't
Tom
there in
Brady
the old
didn't
day.
play in the
Or-
old day because he was hurt, of course people would sell their tickets.
That's a
They'd
good
be
point.
disappointed.
That's a good point.
That's
It's
just
like the
sports.
ratings for TV when Tiger Woods played golf.
Yeah. I mean, I think in any sport, you want to, and this is why I think Tiger Woods is actually really sort of a great comparison to what's happening here, because golf has not done as well without Tiger Woods.
Well, that makes my point, not your point, doesn't it?
Well,
that it's so much,
but it's
so
still
tied to one brilliant player.
But what I think is a little bit different about basketball than there is about golf. First of all, people still pay attention to golf, and it may not do as well, but it does a lot better than it did prior to Tiger Woods. But people really didn't like other golfers had a real issue with Tiger Woods early on. I'm sure there was a racial component. He broke a racial barrier. I think that there was also you get all this adoration and nobody pays. And I've been playing on this tour for a long time, but he has helped lift the sport to the point where, I mean, now you could probably at least, at bare minimum, I bet you could name 5 golfers, right?
Would you go to a WNBA game if none of the stars were playing?
Well, you know what I think
I mean, not like if I knew it was like the last game of the season and not any good player on either side. Well, no, because it's probably not going to be a good game. But I wouldn't want to go if you told me that you could give me tickets to a Celtics game on the last day of the year and both sides.
You wouldn't be crazy about that.
Yeah,
either.
I wouldn't want to go. Like, why?
I hope you're right.
I mean, no
I want to
offense
believe
to
that.
like the nice Luke Cornett's and Baylor Shiremans of the world, but like, you know. You're a bench player. Like, I probably wouldn't want to go to that game either.
You know what? And maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think what's different is, I hadn't really been paying that much attention to the WNBA.
And now you are.
Well, then I saw these college women and these professional women, and I thought, this is not the game I saw women play 10 years ago. And I think that's, to me, what's made a difference. They are so talented.
How many WNBA games have you watched?
Maybe 2.
And they both had.
But I'm not a big sports watcher, period. So I'm not a good person to ask.
And listen,
but I think that's one of the differences. I think.
I also feel like I don't watch every NBA game. I don't watch every WNBA game. If it's a good matchup between two, I feel like you watch what you have time for. But I pay attention now. Like the other day, I was like, I'm going to see what the standings are in the WNBA. I may not have watched a ton of games
that's
this year.
a huge thing,
but like
actually.
that is a big
Then
thing because
fine,
at least you're cognizant and interested in it, and that is how fandom grows.
Let's stay on women's sports for a second. I'm going to try to filibuster this so we have no time left for Belichick.
Great.
If I possibly can.
We're cutting you off.
Okay, so is it called Boston Legacy FC? Is that the new name?
Yes, Boston Legacy FC is the new name.
Okay, the reason we have Mayor Wu here tomorrow, and one of the things we're going to talk to her about is obviously one of the major things that Josh Kraft is challenging her about is the whole White Stadium decision, where the soccer team and high school players will get to play at White Stadium. And one of the reasons allegedly for the rush in tearing down the old stadium and moving ahead with litigation as quickly as possible was so that the pro women's team would be able to play in the stadium next year. Now they won't play in the stadium next year. They're going to be in Gillette for their first
opening season. Yeah.
What do you think the impact of that is?
I mean, listen, what are you going to do, right? Like, you can't, if you're going to really, like, how frustrating would it be if Legacy FC said, well, we have to be in White Stadium, and so they cut corners, or it wasn't finished, or it wasn't the type of stadium that is deserving of a professional team. Like, this happens all the time in professional sports, where maybe you have to stay in your old arena. Look at what's happening to the Oakland Athletics in baseball right now.
They're in a minor league
They're
park?
in a minor league park, and so are the Tampa Bay Rays because
right,
of what
the roof
happened.
flew off,
Like, right? So sometimes you have to make snap adjustments, and things don't go your way. Like, is it disappointing? Of course it is. Everyone was hoping that they would have their own stadium right from the jump. It would be ready to go, but legal challenges and all the things that come with stadium building has pushed this back. So it's either push your team back an extra year, which that's silly. So you want to now launch in 2027, or you pivot, you go play where the the Revs play and the Patriots play, and you play down in Gillette for 1 year where people already go to watch soccer. And
World Cup's going to be there next year,
World Cup
too.
is going to be there next year, and then you shift to White Stadium. It will get there, and hopefully this move, I guess my only fear would be, does a move to Gillette further delay progress on White Stadium? Like, I am for White Stadium. I would like to see it built. I would like the Legacy FC to have their own home and to have a state-of-the-art facility for a women's team. I think that's really important. But now I do wonder, like, does it become easier to keep pushing it off?
I think the incentive for Wu, and again, we'll talk to her about it tomorrow, is going to be to not let that happen.
Right.
Because it's an issue with her primary opponent. Okay, Marjorie, go ahead.
So Jim went down to some investigative report.
No, I did not.
Week.
Oh, yes,
how was Provincetown?
Yeah, dragged the whole family down.
Did you go?
So he could go to the sex shop in Provincetown.
No, it's not why I went to Provincetown. I've been to Provincetown probably every year for the last 30 plus years.
But did you go?
He did.
I did go to Toys of Eros.
He sent me pictures.
How was Toys of
By
Eros?
the way, for those who don't know,
pictures?
according to reports, I have a picture. According to reports, the business manager of Toys of Eros on Commercial Street in Provincetown is the mother of, what's her name again?
Jordan
I can't
Hudson.
remember.
Oh,
Jordon
you know
Hudson.
her name.
Thank you very much. And let's put it this way. She may not have been there when I happened by on Saturday. That's all I have to say.
Yep.
I was not doing investigative journalism. I was walking down Commercial Street.
Did you?
I saw Toys of Eros and I went in.
Okay. So,
but
end
did
of
you
discussion.
see the latest Airbnb videos of Bill Belichick that came out at the end of last
That's
week?
right.
for you two.
Let's,
Go ahead.
Let's discuss that now. He's got no shirt on. He's coming out of an Airbnb.
So we saw that already, but there were a few more videos that came out. Now Jordon Hudson's mad at Airbnb, and she's tweeting at them because do you let them release security footage? It's not security.
It's a Ring video, right?
It's a Ring camera video. It says right on the listing that there's a Ring camera video.
Okay.
But Pablo Torre has done, and listen, let's be honest, this is very tabloidy.
It's okay. Spent years in
But
a tabloid.
there were a couple of little nuggets once again in Pablo Torre's reporting that were interesting, like talking to Channing Crowder, who is the co-host of a podcast that Bill appeared on in an attempt to sort of right the ship and get people back on message for his book and for what's going on with him and Jordan. And then Channing Crowder comes out because he wasn't part of the interview. His co-host Ryan Clark conducted it and says, yeah, Jordon Hudson was there. She ran everything. Bill looked at her. He's like, I've never seen, he's like, for a coach that I have known who has been in control of everything, he said the way that he was, and he didn't use the term deferential, I'm using it, but that he was deferential. He said she, quote, had her paws on everything.
She scripted the beginning of the interview.
She scripted the beginning of the interview.
Just explain the Airbnb and the shirtless Bill.
Okay, so the Airbnb, we first started digging into this relationship, I believe it was a year or so ago. Someone found Ring camera video of Bill Belichick leaving a nondescript house that looked like it was on the shoreline somewhere in nothing but shorts and no top. And he looked disheveled. It looked like he was going out. Turns out, he was staying at this Airbnb with Jordon Hudson. She had booked it for 4 nights. They only stayed there 1 night. Did you listen to this interview, by the way? Because
Thank
they
God
interview.
I did
Well, no,
not.
you have to. They interview the owners of the Airbnb, and they're hysterical.
They are?
They thought that
It's the happiest Marjorie's been since she saw Louis Pugh's photograph.
So they thought that it was either her grandfather or a coke dealer. They couldn't figure out why he was like so disheveled and why they were like meeting in this like so it's a house, it's like a bedroom apartment with their home on top of it that they rented for 4 nights. Like they never in a million years thought that the old guy, like we never thought the old guy coming in and out was Bill Belichick. And then they saw the Ring camera video and they're like, God, this kind of looks like Bill Belichick. So then they started sending it around to friends, which is how it ended up getting released.
Where was he going with no shirt on?
So it turns out that he parked his car where it said no parking.
Oh.
And the people who ran the Airbnb contacted Jordan and said, hey, listen, we just started renting this out. We don't want to get in trouble with the HOA. Like, I don't know whose car that is, but they need to move it. And so he is all disheveled, no shirt. At one point, the second video, he comes out with this like bag where the strap is all messed up. And he's like looking for. He put the key on his tire. Like he's like looking on the tire for his key, like I do after like a long hike or something. It It is all.
By the
I
way,
just
in
cannot
fairness
wrap
to
my brain around all of
Belichick,
it.
I had no shirt on when I went to Toys R Us on Saturday.
jeez, Jim.
So there we
Where's
go.
Where's the
okay,
video?
is this over, I hope? Is this over?
Okay.
Are we done?
Yeah, we're done.
Okay, well, it's a
fine.
pleasure. Thank you. Very nice to see you.
Thank you very much,
What's the
Trenni.
name? For those people who are into this,
Pablo Torre finds out is the
Pablo
Torre
guy,
is
yes.
standing by his reporting.
He is standing by
He's
his
not
reporting.
apologizing.
No.
And Jordon is implying that there may be a suit, so we'll see how far he
no,
can
she
go.
posted that and then she immediately took it down,
She
which
immediately
is
took
another
it down.
interesting
So maybe
thing.
she's not going to be suing.
Okay, so you two can talk
Thank
about
you
this
very
on the
much,
phone
Trenni
tonight.
Casey.
Nice to see you,
Trenni Casey is
Casey.
an anchor
Thank you
reporter
very
at
much.
NBC Sports Boston, a Boston Public Radio contributor. Thank you very much, Trenni,
Thank you,
as always,
Trenni.
for coming in. Okay, after a quick break, European travel guru Rick Steves zooms in, fresh off the trip to Prague, London, Barcelona, updating his guides along the way. He's going to tell us what it's like for Americans traveling overseas at this particular junction, and a lot about these cities. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Given the black community's fraught history with law enforcement, local activists know that citizenship is no guarantee that African Americans won't get caught up in immigration crackdowns.
I think that there's not much difference between black people and brown people in this particular circumstance.
And they're preparing.
Hey man, good, I got something for you.
It's called the Black Book.
It's a resource guide to provide people the opportunity to know their rights.
I'm Paul Singer. This story today on GBH's All Things Considered.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked #1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday. And Supermicro and NVIDIA, accelerating AI with a wide range of AI servers and the NVIDIA AI Enterprise software platform. Supermicro is committed to driving AI infrastructure breakthroughs with rack-scale innovations.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy, live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Speaking of the Boston Public Library, Mayor Wu, Michelle Wu, will join us for an hour tomorrow at the library from noon to 1 to take our questions and yours. But right now, we're joined on Zoom by Rick Steves, travel man extraordinaire, best-selling author, television and radio host, and owner of the Rick Steves Europe Tour Group. You can catch Rick Steves Europe weeknights at 7:30 on GBH2, and his radio show, Travel with Rick Steves, Sundays at 4 on GBH 89.7, despite Donald Trump's wishes to the contrary. Rick, it is excellent to see you. Welcome back. How are you?
It's nice to be home, and it's nice to be with you.
Great to talk to you, Rick, as always. But before we get to these different places you travel to and Americans traveling overseas at this juncture, you wrote a great piece for the Seattle paper out there about public broadcasting. Tell us what you said. And I should preface this, of course, because we are under threat. Donald Trump and the Republican Congress is poised to cut funding all across the country to public broadcasting.
Yeah, you know, I've been involved in public broadcasting for 30 years, and you guys know just as well as me what an oasis it is on the media landscape for us to have this one little thoughtful corner where we can, assume an attention span and where we can respect people's intelligence. And we're treating our listeners not as numbers on some ratings chart, but as neighbors. And I just love this idea that we can make programming, and this is what I'm so thankful for in public television and radio, that we can do programming driven not by a passion for keeping advertisers happy, but by a passion for just inspiring and equipping people to reach out and embrace this world in all of its diversity. So, in a certain mindset, that's something to celebrate. And in another mindset, that's something to crush. And I just think media is underrated as an important part of what makes our democracy strong. The founding fathers recognized that, and I think they called it the fourth estate.
Yeah.
Some way to keep the electorate tuned in so they could be responsible when it comes to voting. And public broadcasting is not a charity. It comes off as a charity because we always have to ask for money, but it's a service. And our government helps out to the tune of $1.60 per citizen per year to help make public broadcasting viable from a pay the bills point of view. But people don't recognize, and this is so often the case, they don't recognize the consequences of a Trump wee hours of the morning temper tantrum. If they succeed in defunding public broadcasting, radio and TV, it's not going to hurt Boston, where you live. It's not going to hurt Seattle, where I live. It's going to hurt the parts of our country that are already in a food desert. There's disadvantaged corners of our country, rural, small town, where the economy's dropped out or whatever, where you can't get healthy food, and it's called a food desert. And I would think that if we don't have this government help, we won't have that media nourishment either in these parts of the country, and that's what's going to suffer. It's going to be the rural communities. Basically, it's where Trump's base lives, and they're not going to have a voice anymore. Public broadcasting gives small communities a voice. It's organic media, and we've noticed this change in the last generation in many dimensions of our, economic world, that it's got to be big to survive. My publisher is now big because my idealistic little publisher couldn't survive. So they had to be merged and merged and merged. So now I'm owned by one of the 5 biggest publishing houses in the world from a writer's point of view. And that's what viability is. And in media, that gets rid of the small local voice. So I was making the case in my editorial that $1.60 a year per citizen is a practical investment in giving a voice to small communities, as well as a good investment in the fabric of our democracy, because it engenders a thoughtful electorate. But I don't think you'll win Trump's heart by saying you're going to develop critical thinking and a thoughtful electorate. That threatens him. So I wanted to frame it where this, and it's just you can make many excuses for why we should spend $400 million a year as a country on public broadcasting, but it makes it gives a voice to our rural corners and our small towns.
Wow. I was on the fence, Rick, and then you convinced me. I'm totally on your side. We're talking to Rick Steves. Rick, over the weekend I was reading USA Today online, and I thought of you. You'll understand why, because the headline of this story was why more Americans are hiding their nationality abroad. What are you telling your tour guides to tell the people on your buses as they travel throughout Europe this summer?
Well, this is very interesting because I've been traveling ever since Nixon's days, and there's times when you don't say you're an American, and there's times that you say, yeah, I'm an American. Europeans love it when you have a Bill Clinton or a Barack Obama as presidents. You can measure it in how they do their advertising. They will comb all of the Americana out of their ads when the brand of America is down, and they pump up the Beach Boys melodies and the baseball apple pie and Chevrolet to sell their stuff when America's brand is up. America's brand was up for 8 years of Obama, obviously, not because Obama's some lunatic liberal fringe, but because he believes in government. And so does Europe, as a way of societies to work together in a way that is fair and good for all. Right now, the brand of America is way down, and nobody would be advertising with American jingles like they would in other times. What does that mean for us traveling? I think we're a lot more interesting now than we were 6 months ago. So that's a plus. When we travel, a lot of Americans would think that Europeans would be mad at us, like Canadians would be mad at us. Well, I'm not thinking about Canada right now, and they've got good grounds to be upset with us. But in Europe, I met nobody that was mad at me because of Trump. I met people that were sad, they were confused, they were worried, and they had questions. And I thought it's a fun time, it's an interesting time, and it's an important time to be traveling and to be to compare notes with each other and to be inspired by each other. But there's no reason for any American not want to go to Europe now because of what Europeans think of Trump. It's a fine time to be traveling. I didn't get a hint of that. I just got a lot of confusion, a lot of disappointment. Other countries want America at the table because if you believe in the ideals of America, those ideals need the family of nations to rally together to be strong, because they're up against some headwinds. And when America's at the table, things happen. And when America's not at the table, there's not that much organization and coordination. A good example, I think, would be the funding of Voice of America.
Yeah.
I was just at the former Voice of America headquarters in Prague, and it was right there in a former, secret police building that was iconic in that country for what it was like to live under the Soviet rule. And now it was symbolically the home of Voice of America. And we're saving a pittance to get rid of the Voice of America. And the people who line item that out had no idea what is the value of Voice of America. Voice of America is, I'm a progressive person, I'm a liberal person. I'm not always in favor of American propaganda, but Voice of America is American propaganda. And now it's going to be Voice of China, because we're going to save a little bit of money. But that's not a good investment in the brand of America around this planet. So there's some big consequences going on, and there's a lot of friends of ours that are pretty confused overseas, and they're just wondering what the hell is going on with American democracy.
One last thing about this. You said it's not a bad time for Americans to be traveling, but I wonder about people who are American citizens now who came from someplace else, who may not look American, or they have an accent, or that are worried about leaving the country and getting back in the country. You may not have a handle on that group necessarily, but it seems logical. If I were someone that came from someplace else, I'd be nervous.
There's a chill. There is a chill, and I'm interested in chills. I really enjoyed traveling through the Warsaw Pact countries during communism. I know what that chill is. I know that people left the faucet on, so when we're having a conversation in their apartment, so the neighbors in communist Bulgaria couldn't hear what we're talking about.
Oh, wow.
Every night I had to sleep in a different home in Bulgaria and in Romania, so that people wouldn't see that there's an American living in this place.
Wow.
And now I was just in New York talking with a very, very important, influential leader in a organization that helps fight hunger. And we were talking candidly in a restaurant, and all of a sudden, his partner, his associate from that organization, said, "We can't talk about that right now." It was like, was there a bug in the little ornament on the middle of the table that was recording us? Was one of our phones recording us? Could somebody be listening in on our conversation? This is the United States of America, and people are having that dampening, reminiscent of the Soviet Union paranoia, and it's kind of sending chills through the way we look at our lives. I want to say I'm from the United States of America when I travel. Now I say I'm from Seattle.
Yeah.
It's just you don't get. It's not as fraught if I say I'm from Seattle. It's just breaks my heart, because I want to be proud of America, and I am proud of the ideals of America. But right now, I'm disappointed in the American public, and I have always known what solidarity is. Lech Walesa and the Dock Workers Union.
Yes.
With solidarity.
Yes.
These humble working class Poles helped bring down the Soviet Union. Solidarity, that's what they were called. Their union was called Solidarity. I traveled in Central America back in the Contra days, in the Sandinista days, and they knew that solidarity was fundamental to their survival. You didn't pick and choose your causes. Any cause that was for freedom was a cause that you were on board with. And in the United States now, Trump is hoping that we don't have solidarity, because as long as we don't have solidarity, we can be picked off one at a time. Thank God Harvard is recognizing that, because one at a time, individual colleges can be so vulnerable. Individual law firms can be so vulnerable. Individual journalists can be so, individual TV networks can be so vulnerable. And solidarity is a new word that applies to the United States of America right now if you're interested in the struggle to save democracy.
You know, Rick Steves, we are going to get to at least some of Barcelona, Prague, and London, your recent travels. But staying on this for a second, I've mentioned to you more than once. First time I ever met you was when you were campaigning in Massachusetts for, I don't know if it was medicinal marijuana or decriminalization. It was one of the early ballot questions. And I asked you on the show, I quoted the alleged comment from Michael Jordan, who said Republicans buy sneakers too, when asked why he didn't engage in politics. And I said to you, are you worried about losing customers? And your answer, much more artfully than this, was not at all. This is what I believe. Do you lose customers because of your outspoken position on Trump in America?
Well, of course I do. But why would that matter to me if I'm an American whose whole beautiful world experience is thankful to American democracy? You know, I make plenty of money. If I made a little less money and I could help the fabric of our democracy, I get people that tell me, Rick, we know what you think about whatever is the cause du jour, marijuana, or we know what you think about President Trump, or we know what you think about public television, well, nobody's ever said that for public television, but for a lot of people have said, we know what you think, and we're not going to use your guidebooks, and we're not going to go on your tours. And all I can think is Europe's going to be more fun without you. Okay, that's the first thing that comes to my mind. The second thing that comes to my mind is, why on earth would any successful business person compromise their ideals in order to have a little better sales? I've had people when I've spoken out against some war that we're in, tell me they're going to boycott me, and I just thought it reminded me there are people in a position of influence that would support a war they don't believe in because somebody told them it was good for their business. I just don't. I don't think that's heroic. I don't think that's particularly ethical. I just think that's decent and honest. And if there's any blessing, or if there's any bountiful harvest from the fact that we've got the greatest society and democracy in the world, or at least we like to think, it's that we can enjoy the luxury of being honest with each other and share our beliefs and encourage each other to do better. That's the fruits of our labor when it comes to having a democracy that we've nurtured for 2 centuries. We should be able to say what we think and expect ourselves to do better and to work to make a country that we are proud of. Who can be proud of what we're doing right now? It reminds me of back in Bush's day when we had Abu Ghraib and that torture going on in the Middle East, And I remember other magazines, Der Spiegel in Germany had a cover that showed, that featured American torture of Muslims in the Middle East, and our soldiers laughing about it and dancing over naked Muslims being terrorized by dogs. And this was our country. I'm part of it. I'm a taxpayer. This is who I am. I had to own that. I tore that cover off and I folded it up and I put that heartbreaking photograph in my shirt pocket and I wore it with me for that entire trip. We need to own our country. We need to recognize that our national budget is a moral document. It is who we are. And if we are privileged and we can skate through this problem with no impact on us personally, that doesn't matter. We're a society and we do things together. That's why one reason, Jim, I was such an outspoken person about legalizing marijuana. And it wasn't medicinal, it was flat out recreational.
It was recreational, okay.
I just want to be able to smoke pot and giggle and enjoy music and have fun eating a Triscuit, It's my civil liberty. And I really believe that that's something, if we believe in something, we can respectfully speak out about and not risk being silenced or going to jail. It's the first time in our life that we have to calculate, should we say this or not? Is it safe for us?
I
The
know.
first time in our lives that Americans have to calculate that, like we live in some dystopian country without democracy. we have a democracy here. What's more important, the price of eggs or the health of our democracy? I can blame that on my travels. I just really feel like I remember Thomas Jefferson said, travel makes a person wiser if less happy. And I remember Muhammad said, I don't remember, but I know 1,400 years ago, Muhammad said, don't tell me how educated you are, tell me how much you've traveled. And I have found that we learn more about our own society and our own home by leaving it and looking at it from a distance. And that's what I do 100 days out of the year. I leave this country and I look at it from overseas. I look back at it. And then I see what's going on in the country where I'm at. We're dealing with the same challenges. And what can we learn from each other? How can we do it better? And how can we be comrades in arms for the health of our democracies? That's what it's all about now. I was in Istanbul a month ago or 2 months ago when 1 million people were in the streets demonstrating against their wannabe autocrat, Erdogan. And he just literally arrested the mayor of Istanbul. Yeah. I mean, that would be like Trump arresting Gavin Newsom and putting him in jail because he was a viable opponent. And Erdogan is more of a dictator than Trump is right now because they don't have as strong a democracy as we have. And in Turkey, judges have a choice, agree with Erdogan or resign. We're getting there in our society right now. That's why Trump admires Erdogan. That's why Trump admires Viktor Orban in Hungary. Dictators love to hang out with each other. What on earth is Trump doing with a dictator from El Salvador in the White House? And half of America doesn't see a problem in that. My life has been complicated because I travel a lot, and I know how fragile democracy is. I know how complicated it is to run a society and a country, and I'm so appreciative of good governance, and I cut my government some slack when it's not as efficient as it might be. Because Winston Churchill said famously, democracy's the worst system of governance except for all the others.
We're talking to Rick Steves. Let's talk about horrible transition. You talk about what you've learned. We only have a couple minutes left. You know what Marjorie and I learned that we didn't know about until this morning? We learned about mudlarking in London.
In London, yeah.
What is mudlarking, my friend?
I love mudlarking. The Thames, we're going to talk about something that's not political right now.
Exactly.
Yes.
The Thames is a tidal river, so it keeps washing in and out historic stuff because London's had these great fires and so on, and bombings and all sorts of stuff, and it ends up in the river and it washes up. And after every high tide and a low tide, you can walk along the banks of the Thames. I've done it a lot, and you can pick up little bits of tile roofs that were put in after the Great Fire when they wouldn't have wooden roofs anymore for fire safety. In the 1800s, they had these one-hit clay pipes, and people would smoke a pipe and then they would just throw it into the water. And these 150-year-old pipes wash ashore, and they look like a little piece of plumbing or electronic insulation or something like that. But they're actually bits of pipes, and you can pick them up and take them home. But in the last few years, mudlarking got a little bit too popular, so now you have to have a license to mudlark. But I got to interview a woman who wrote a book called Mudlarking, and I just, when you go to museums and stuff, you'll always see references in London to mudlarking. It's a reminder that there's history all around you. I'm going back in 2 weeks with my TV crew to make a show on London, and I'm working on the script just this weekend. And it's so fun to look at a iron and glass industrial age trading hall. I'm thinking of the Leadenhall, and then you pan up and you see these 50-story skyscrapers going right out of this industrial age compost pile of local history, and you see all the regeneration that London is doing with its industrial past and turning it into a very energetic sort of present and future, and that's all part of sightseeing to be up to date on that. So maybe we can talk about that next time we get together.
You know what I loved in the mudlarking before you go? I love when you wondered whether or not one of those pipes had been used by Charles Dickens.
Yeah,
that was my favorite.
That's right.
Gave me chills. Yeah. I just love that.
Hey, Rick.
It is. Hey, so nice to talk to you
guys.
So
nice to talk to you, and thank you for talking about our place in the world. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Rick.
Well, I talk about it as a person who doesn't believe in America bashing. This is America loving. When we talk about high expectations for our country, I think it's a beautiful patriotic act. And when we are blessed to be able to travel, I think it comes with a stewardship obligation to learn from those travels and come home and implement that broader perspective here as citizens of our country.
Thank you, Rick.
You did it beautifully, Rick. It's great to see you. We'll see you soon. Rick Steves, thanks so much.
We have been speaking with Rick Steves of Rick Steves Europe, weeknights at 7:30 on GBH's radio show Travel with Rick Steves, airs Sunday at 4 p.m., 89.7. Up next, two more things. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Remember that big recall of deli meat last year? Food safety experts say it could happen again.
Do I foresee another Boar's Head situation? Absolutely. I worry about the public.
I'm Mary Louise Kelly. Federal job cuts mean fewer people now working in inspections and testing, putting the safety of everything we eat at risk. On the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Porter Square Books, hosting Tim Weed with The Afterlife Project, a novel about scientists and their test subject working to save the human species. June 5th at 7 at PSB Boston Edition. Info at portersquarebooks.com. And Boston Children's Museum with 100 Acre Wood, a Winnie the Pooh experience. Opening May 30th. Visitors can return to the 100 Acre Wood with everyone's favorite silly old bear. Tickets at bostonchildrensmuseum.org.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan. That was a hell of a segment. Live from the library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Time for two more things. Marjorie, what's your thing?
Well, of course, with the Bill Belichick romance, with a woman almost 50 years younger than he is.
You're doing it again?
No, we've been talking about May-December romances.
We have?
Yeah, one we haven't talked a lot about until this weekend, though, is the one involving the president of France, who's Emmanuel Macron. Of course, he's 47 years old, and he is married to a woman who's 72 years old, who used to be his teacher in high school.
Yeah. How old is she again?
She is 72. He is 47.
Wow.
And they became involved when he was in his late teens. Apparently, she ditched her husband. And she had 3 children as well. And she began this romance with her teenage student at the time. But
What's
you know,
your point exactly?
the French. Well, it's just another romance, but there seems to be trouble in paradise.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, you saw the video?
Yes, because there was a video this week when he was talking to her, and all of a sudden she shoved him
on the plane,
right in the face on the plane when they were touching down for a visit to Vietnam, and we could all see it online and we're wondering what is going on in the Macron marriage. Perhaps there's trouble, and of course it has raised speculation about why doesn't Melania Trump shove Donald Trump in the face too?
Because she hasn't seen him in 2 years. That's why.
Right. So anyway, and she wouldn't take his hand when they walked down the stairs of the airplane.
Very close observer,
very close
you are.
Observer. So that's my little trouble in paradise tale.
That was an excellent one more thing, I should say.
I think you're making fun of me, Jim.
Rather low rent.
Low rent. Well,
now,
that's me.
I have a news feed that I wake up to every morning.
Yep.
It has exactly 40 stories every day. And I wake up at 5:22, as you know. It's one of the first things I check out.
5:22, not 5:20 or 5:25.
Nope.
5:22.
And of the 40, and this is true, usually about 33 of them are about Donald Trump. This morning, and I have no idea what happened, you know what the most dominant topic in my newsfeed was? Hot dogs. This is true. There were 11 of my 40 stories were about hot dogs. I'm going to read you some of it's one of my favorite foods.
But you figure your phone might be spying on you, Jim, or your computer spying on you.
I haven't had a hot dog since I had one at Flower Boston Common.
They hear you talking about hot dogs.
I do or dreaming about them. I think here's some of the titles. We taste tested 13 brands of beef hot dogs. Here are our favorites. The $10 Wagyu beef hot dog that I'm grilling on repeat all summer. The absolute best way to store hot dogs. I tested 5 methods. How to make a Parisian hot dog. You know how you do that?
No.
It's on a baguette, and then you melt cheese on top. Oh, my God. In any case, and here's the key. This state eats the most hot dogs in the U.S. Do you know what the number 1 state is?
I have no idea.
West Virginia.
Oh, West Virginia.
We're not even in the top 3.
That's one of the poorest states.
It is. And guess how many hot dogs the average person eats a year? This is true.
In Massachusetts?
No, in West Virginia, number 1 state.
300.
481. Now,
more than one a day?
That's exactly, almost 1.5. This is important because we have discussed ad nauseum, you and I, the study out of University of Michigan School of Public Health to 2021. It said that eating one hot dog could take away 36 minutes from your life. Do you remember that study?
I do.
It was published in the journal Nature Foods. So I did the math. If you're the average West Virginian, and you eat 481 hot dogs a year, do you know how many days that takes away your life?
You're probably already dead.
289.
289.
So, you know how many days there are in a year?
365.
That doesn't leave
Jim.
many. That means essentially
You'd be dead
42
any
weeks are gone because of your hot dog consumption. Okay. I don't have a point here, by the way.
Oh.
I'm just saying, and only 10 weeks are there for you to live your life and prosper.
I have a theory about why you get these notifications besides your phone and
the
computer.
hot dog thing? What is it?
Memorial Day weekend.
Oh, it's probably true.
Don't you think?
It's probably true.
In the case you're going to go out
probably
and
true.
go crazy grilling hot dogs.
Best hot dog in Boston, Flour Boston comment on a brioche roll.
Brioche roll.
With butter.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Even if you don't like hot dogs, it's worth it just for the roll.
481 anonymous texter. Wasn't there a report of Jim coming out of an Airbnb with him wearing only a dickie? There was a report. I will neither confirm nor deny.
It's a wild weekend.
That was it.
Wild weekend.
So that's my hot dog story.
Okay, coming up after the 1 o'clock
that,
news
Jim.
was wonderful, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you. Coming up after the 1 o'clock news, CNN's John King. He's been out visiting Trump voters in Pennsylvania. I'm going to hear what he had to say. Listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
If you're a GBH sustainer and you received a new bank or credit card in the mail recently, there's an easy way to update your information. Just visit gbh.org/update and keep your membership up to date. That's gbh.org/update.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its 2025-2026 season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Dr. Anthony Fauci, Tipping Point author Malcolm Gladwell, Ken Burns, and conservation photographer Christina Mittermeier. BostonSpeakers.org. And Gentle Giant Moving and Storage Company, employing athletes since 1980 and currently hiring to join their team. Gentle Giant is an equal opportunity employer. More at gentlegiant.com/careers.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 3 of BPR Live from the Boston Public Library. First up, John King, Chief National Correspondent for CNN, just back from a trip to Pennsylvania where he spoke with Trump voters, feeling firsthand the president's hardline trade policies, but not quite ready to abandon him. Plus, Trump goes rogue on Memorial Day and at West Point graduation.
I'm Marjorie Yeagan. Then we'll end this summery afternoon by opening the phone and text lines to talk golf. We're inspired by former teacher Sean Malia, who set out to golf at all 350 or so golf courses across Massachusetts. We want to know, what does golf mean to you, if anything? Is it a release, a chance to get away from the stress of a 9-to-5 job? Spouses, do you resent it if your partner is off 4, 5, or 6 hours a day playing golf on the weekend? Or are you glad to get rid of him? Take a swing next in the third hour at BPR 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The Trump administration is asking federal agencies to cancel their remaining federal contracts with Harvard University. The administration accuses Harvard of anti-Semitism, which the school denies. NPR's Alyssa Nadwarny reports the contracts are estimated to be worth about $100 million.
A letter from the U.S. General Services Administration dated Tuesday tells agencies to review current contracts with Harvard and terminate or find an alternative vendor. The letter asks agencies to submit a list of contracts they have terminated with the university by June 6th. This is in addition to the more than $2 billion the administration has already frozen. Harvard has not yet responded to NPR's request for comment. The school is suing the Trump administration to block the federal funding freeze. The university claims that the administration's moves are unlawful and that the cuts threaten academic freedom and First Amendment rights. Alyssa Nadwarny, NPR News.
President Trump spent Memorial Day carrying out a presidential tradition. He paid tribute to deceased military service members with a wreath and a speech at Arlington National Cemetery. But as NPR's Medical Montanaro reports, Trump's remarks on social media struck a very different tone.
Memorial Day, first of all, is a day to remember those who died during active duty in the military. It's not a day to tell people happy Memorial Day, but that's what Trump did 3 times on social media, wishing a happy Memorial Day to, quote, including the scum that spent the last 4 years trying to destroy our country through warped radical left minds.
NPR's Domenico Montanaro reporting. Consumers seem to be expressing more confidence about the U.S. economic outlook after the administration suspended some of its most punishing tariffs. NPR's Scott Horsley reports this marks the first uptick in confidence in 6 months.
A new survey from the nonprofit Conference Board shows a 14% jump in the group's confidence index. Survey respondents are feeling better about both the current economic situation and prospects for the future. About half the survey responses came in after the U.S. and China agreed to a temporary truce in their trade war. That also gave a boost to the stock market, which contributed to the stronger confidence numbers. People are still jittery that the president's tariffs will lead to higher prices, although some spoke favorably about cheaper gasoline. Survey respondents are also nervous about the job market, despite the low unemployment rate. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
If you're planning to book a flight on Southwest, today's your last chance to do it without being charged for checked bags. The airline plans to start imposing fees on most passengers Wednesday, reportedly $35 for the first bag, $45 for the second. For decades, Southwest boasted a 2 free bags policy that it said set it apart from its discount rivals. That all ends tomorrow. It's NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu has laid out a multi-point summer safety plan for residents and visitors. Among the points highlighted in today's press conference are community input and collaboration and violence prevention and intervention.
Because the work of community safety is also community healing. And that means ensuring that every member of our community is supported and whole. So that is the ethos behind the community safety work that we do. Not a single point in time. It's responsive and proactive.
Also part of the summer safety program are youth jobs programs and water safety with initiatives like the Swim Safe Boston program that includes free swim lessons and water safety awareness campaigns. And speaking of swimming safely, the man who set out to swim around Martha's Vineyard has completed his 62-mile journey, becoming the first person to do so. 55-year-old Louis Pugh vowed to complete the swim around the 50th anniversary of the movie Jaws, which was partially filmed on Martha's Vineyard, to change public perception around sharks and raise awareness about their endangerment instead of viewing them as cold-blooded killers. The swim began on May 15th and took a total of 12 days, with Pugh swimming multiple hours a day in 47-degree water. Sounds like fun, doesn't it? In sports, Red Sox and Brewers are back at it for Game 2 of their series in Milwaukee tonight, 7:40 start. The French Open continues at Roland Garros. It's in its 3rd day. We're at 76 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Indeed, committed to giving job listings increased visibility with relevant candidates through its sponsored jobs feature. Learn more at Indeed.com/NPR. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
Hey, it's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I'm going to remind people that we're going to be back here at the library tomorrow with Boston Mayor Michelle Wu from noon to 1, taking our questions and yours. Hello again, Jim.
Hi, Marjorie. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
I was reading a text complimenting you. We're joined now on Zoom by John King. He's the chief national correspondent for CNN and the man behind the reporting project All Over the Map. Hello there, John.
You want to read the text out loud? That's fine.
No, that's okay. We don't want to do that. But thank you very, very much. Thank you very much, Jim, for mentioning that. Okay, and
You're very
thank you
welcome,
for joining
Marjorie.
us. So let's talk about Harvard. Now they're going after Harvard some more. Trump is saying they're going to get no more contracts with the government. I mean, it's basically just screw Harvard, I guess, is the position, and we'll see what happens with this. I mean, what's the deal?
It certainly seems to become quite personal, right, in the sense that first it was foreign students. Before that it was other grants and criticisms, and then Harvard filed suit. And I think it's the Harvard filing suit to challenge what Trump is doing that seems to have set him off even more. So now whatever Harvard wants, Trump is against. I mean, that's probably a bit of an overstatement, but only by a little bit, right? So no matter what it is. And this is a fight, on the one hand, with the Trump base, this is like candy. Trump going after Ivy League, Trump going after Cambridge, Trump going after Blue State, Massachusetts, Trump going after coastal elites. It's like a free lunch for the mega base, if you will. I will posit this, though. Consumer confidence did tick up a little bit last month, but Donald Trump was elected to lower prices and fix the economy and to fix the border. There's been some progress. Certainly, border crossings were down late in the Biden administration. They're down even more now. But on the big economic questions, that is how Republicans are going to be judged in the next election. And so this is important to Trump. It's important, or at least it's fun for some of his base. I'm not sure middle America, swing voters who are going to decide whether Trump keeps his majorities in Congress a year and a half from now, whether this is the fight they want him fighting.
So, John, speaking of the fight they do want him fighting, I watched last night your trip to Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, not far from where I grew up. And as I say every time, and it's not just because you're here, you gave such insight into real people that you don't read about in polls or cold newspaper articles. Here's sound from your interview. You interviewed 3 people, 2 who voted for Trump, 1 who was not crazy about Trump at all, was a Harris voter. Here's sound from your interview with Gerard Babb is his name. He's an assembly line worker at Mack Trucks in Pennsylvania. He voted for Trump and stands to lose his job as a result of Trump's tariffs. Here's a little back and forth between Babb and John.
Yeah, Donald Trump could have had a little bit more finesse instead of using like a blanket policy over everything.
So 4 months in, how would you grade Trump?
I'd give Trump right now a B+. I want stuff to happen right now, but I understand that the gears of Washington move very slow.
Too soon, he says, to think about the midterms.
It's very stressful that I'm gonna be out of work in the near future because I want to provide for my wife and kids.
Let me tell you something. I was like beating my head against the wall. It's not your fault. I'm going to be out of work because of Trump's tariffs. I give him a B+. Another guy has a small business, and he says he voted for Trump too. And he says, I paraphrase, and I know you'll correct me if I get this a little bit wrong. He says, in the long run, the tariffs may do something good for the economy. In the short run, it may totally deep six my business. And he didn't appear ready to say a Trump vote was a mistake. They're not atypical Trump supporters in your travels, John, are they?
Trump supporters, in my experience, there is a hardcore base that says he can do no wrong, Jim. But I think there's a much larger, and I think Washington and New York get this wrong a lot. There's a much larger population of people who used to be Democrats, or at least used to be inclined to vote for Democrats, blue-collar people who vote for Trump. But he does not have a lot of nuance. They do. He does not speak of sort of nuance and compromise. They do. So you're familiar with this area. These guys, both Todd Harder and Gerard Babb grew up there. Right. Yeah. They've watched their parents, too, go through this, right? They've watched globalization. If you look at the peak of manufacturing around 1990 and then the big drop after, what happened there? NAFTA happened, China joining the World Trade Organization, globalization, the giant sucking sound Ross Perot used to talk about in Mexico. They have lived this. And so they think Trump is either naive or, I'll be kind, wildly overly optimistic about the power of either his tariffs or his tough talk or the fact that there's going to be an American manufacturing renaissance like that. Trump often talks like, before the ink dries in the executive order, everything in the executive order is going to have happened and we can move on to the next thing. His voters understand it's not going to work that way. Important, they have not abandoned him. But they think he's wrong about tariffs. They think they're going to suffer in the short term about tariffs, and maybe it helps 20, 25 years from now if you have a new American industrial policy. So it tells you, number one, Trump supporters are a lot more nuanced than I think a lot of people in Washington give the credit for. I will also say this, the fact that they are still with Trump, that tells you the Democrats have a very long and steep hill to climb in rebuilding credibility with working class voters.
I love when you were, there was a sign your camera person grabbed that said, even my dog hates Biden, which really,
Yeah, there's still some of that. There's still some of that out. That's a really interesting district, one of the most competitive in the country. Pennsylvania 7th, and it's Bethlehem, Allentown, Easton, 3 places. Go back and study the American Industrial Revolution, right? Just like you have in the rivers in Massachusetts, follow the rivers, and you'll find American industry and the Industrial Revolution. A lot of great iconic American companies there in the past and in the present. But when you get out into the more rural areas of that district, it gets a lot more Trumpy pretty quick.
It just seems like nothing really matters to people that are committed to him. Because, Peter Baker had this great story. Back a million years ago, Hillary Clinton invested money in some cow farm or something for $1,000 and wound up with $100,000. Oh my God, we had to have 1 million investigations about that. Trump and his sons, they estimated they've increased their wealth by like $3 billion. Not wealth that's going to the country, but wealth that's going into their pockets. And the corruption is just wild. Nobody seems to care about that. We have this bill now that we'll see what happens with the bill that went through the House. But is probably is the greatest transfer of wealth from the poor and the middle class to the wealthy, and people are going to be losing their health care. Nobody seems to care about that. And in manufacturing, there were going to be some green jobs in manufacturing, but we're getting rid of those because the president doesn't believe in climate change. So it is odd that nobody seems to care about anything. I just think sometimes I'm living in another planet.
Well, the economy, John's saying, and I agree. Maybe they're giving him more time.
But your health care is part of your economy.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
And losing your job is part of your economy. And maybe you were going to get a green job down in Bedford, and maybe now you're not. So, and not to mention the stealing that's going on. It's just incredible.
I think there are a couple of things at play there. Number one, to your point about what the Republicans have in their big, beautiful bill, as they call it. If the manufacturing economy doesn't get better, if the overall economy doesn't get better by the time the midterms roll around, I would be TBD on a lot of these questions, right? It doesn't take, that was Todd Harder, that he voted for the first time. He's 55 years old. He was eligible to vote back in 1988 for the first time. He'd never cast a ballot until November. Does he come out and vote for the midterms? If he doesn't think the economy is getting any better with a Republican president and Republican majorities, he doesn't sound like he's ready. He says he's open to voting for Democrats. I'd be a little skeptical there because he's a conservative guy. But he says he might not vote, right? So let's hold off on some of that stuff. Back to your point about the Peter Baker piece, which I thought was so well reported. Peter and I go back a little bit. You just mentioned, a long time ago, a young John King walked the Whitewater parcel in western Arkansas.
Oh, you did?
Yes, I was out there. Remember, that was like this big grift
Huge
by the
scandal.
investing in this.
Huge.
Look, I'm not a fan of Hillary Clinton's email server, for example, but there's false equivalency of like anything that the Clintons may have done compared to what you're seeing in plain sight right now between Trump about this Bitcoin, meme coin, other stuff, and what his children are doing and his son-in-law is doing is mind-blowing. Here's my take on that. Trump cynically has convinced everybody that they're all crooks. They're all crooks.
Yeah.
They're all grifting. Democrats, Republicans, every level of government, whether it's your county sheriff or this or that or the other thing. And so you can't trust any of them, but I'm going to close the border and fix the economy. So it's kind of like getting away with it. I'd put it this way. If you have such low expectations of your politicians and your government, if you have such a low bar, you don't think they're even going to be able to climb the basic ethics or basic morality or basic decency, your outrage level goes down because you're not expecting anything of them. And he has created the environment, or at least put on steroids and exacerbated this distrust, mistrust, no faith environment that he then benefits from by abusing it.
Okay, I'm going to try one more thing. This bill, if it gets anywhere, is going to add, what are they saying now, $4 trillion to the deficit. Moody's has said that we're not that great about, they're not that sure about us, guaranteeing paying back our money.
Credit rating, yep.
Yeah, that this is going to put a huge, the transfer has not only been from the poor and middle class to the wealthy, it's to the children that are going to get stuck with this massive increase. And as we know, the deficit was through the roof with Trump first time around. Now it's going through the deficit again through the roof. And our interest rates, it's not like when Obama was there and Obamacare was paid for, but the interest rates were low then. They're not low anymore. So that doesn't matter either. The deficit
I think you're raising really smart policy questions and things that traditionally were tripwires in American politics. And a lot of the traditional tripwires have disappeared under Trump, or at least been put into a locker under Trump. I think it's a fascinating question to ask, do they come back? Number one, you're absolutely right. This is almost like the Wizard of Oz. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. If you go back to the campaign, Donald Trump talked a lot about how it was time to reduce the deficit. He didn't do that in his first term. Let's give him a pass. Let's say COVID happened, right? I'm not saying that to give him a full pass, but let's not relitigate the first Trump term. Where are we now? He said he was going to reduce the deficit. He says he's the Republican president, a conservative party that traditionally has made deficits a priority. There are a lot of Republican senators saying, sorry, House of Representatives, we don't like a lot of what you did in that bill. Some of it's the Medicaid stuff we've talked about before. Some of it might be, there are a lot of Republican senators saying, can we reach a middle ground on these energy credits for green? A lot of that green energy money
is red states,
red states and red communities. So watch that play out. But a lot of them are also saying, we're the Republicans, we're the conservatives. We are not keeping our promise to reduce the deficit. This bill actually explodes the deficit. And so let's watch this play out in the Senate. The Speaker says, I don't have much room, right? I just got this bill through with one vote. You can't change it much or I can't get it back through. So it was a remarkable, quote unquote, political success that Speaker Johnson was able to get those votes. That doesn't mean you can sell it to voters, but in terms of a process victory, that was very important. But let's see what happens as this play out. The fact that you do have more and more Republicans openly criticizing the bill, opening questioning. The president made it happen in the House, so mitigate a little bit of what I'm about to say. But there is some evidence he's starting to perform like a second-term president with very low approval ratings, meaning members of his own party are beginning to speak out against him. Now, he has been very successful in turning up the mega machine to intimidate those people in the past when that happens. I think it's a really interesting question on the Medicaid cuts we've talked about, the deficit, some of these other priorities in the House bill, the policy changes in the House bill. What happens as this goes through the Senate? Because they're not as different as they used to be. The House and the Senate used to be completely different beasts politically. They're not as much anymore. The Senate has become House-like and more MAGA, if you will. But there are still some key differences. So let's watch that one go forward.
So, John, one of the beauties of having a show is I'm now going to bring up two things that nobody cares about either, except me and Marjorie. But when you have a show, you're allowed to talk about whatever you want.
Out of it, Jim. We're out of it.
So Trump gives the commencement address at West Point for the graduation. Talks, as I assume any president would. He's wearing a Make America Great Again red baseball cap.
Yeah.
He talks about Al Capone, golf, and actually trophy wives. Here's a little bit of what he had to say about a real estate developer. His name is Bill Levitt. Here it is.
He ended up getting a divorce, found a new wife. Could you say a trophy wife? I guess we can say a trophy wife. It didn't work out too well, but that doesn't work out too well. I must tell you, a lot of trophy wives doesn't work out.
Yeah.
But it made him happy for a little while at least.
That's exactly what they wanted to hear. And by the way, my understanding, and you know this better than I, the president who gives the commencement address at West Point stays and shakes the hands of all the graduates. He, of course, left early. And then a day or two later, it's Memorial Day, which obviously is a pretty important day in our country for people who missed it because they were vacationing or watching their son play baseball. We'll talk about that in a minute. Here's part of what Donald Trump posted that morning. Happy Memorial Day to all. Now, that's actually quite respectful and nice, including the scum that spent the last 4 years trying to destroy our country through warped, radical left minds. And then he goes after judges who are on a mission to keep murderers, drug dealers, rapists, gang members, and release prisoners from all over the world in our country so they can rob, murder, and rape again. I mean, I would argue, I'm allowed to do this, I know you don't, it doesn't get much lower or more classless than this guy at West Point and on Memorial Day. And to reiterate Marjorie's question, I guess, John, I naively continue to believe that most people are decent people, don't like a leader treating other human beings as disrespectfully as he does. But based upon your work, I am dead wrong.
Not to mention his own trophy wives, who is insulted. Fine. He had two of them, Marla and Melania, insulted them both.
But I am wrong, unfortunately. Am I not?
Well, I think in the rearview mirror, he obviously won the election, and that is behavior that people have seen before, and he won the election, so therefore you are wrong in the rearview mirror. As a kid who grew up in Dorchester, spent a lot of time going to, either the military parts of cemeteries on Memorial Day and Veterans Day, or VFW post up in Lower Mills, or down at Adams Corner. This is not presidential, right? This is not what we are accustomed to. It is not respectful of the day and of the moment and of the history you're supposed to honor on that day. And Donald Trump does get away with it. Yes, you're absolutely correct. Again, I'll come back to the earlier thing. I don't want to overstate this, but I do think, there's some evidence that there are people out there, I'm not saying a groundswell, but some people who voted for Donald Trump who are saying, sir, we elected you to do a couple of big things. Could you please focus? Please focus, please focus, please focus. And then remember, we have these broad generalization conversations sometimes. It's important to focus on the people who settled the last election, which are people who voted for Trump and then voted for Biden and then went back to Trump because they thought Biden was an absentee president, or they were worried about the cost of living. It doesn't take much. If you get into a midterm environment now, remember what happened in the 2018 midterms. If we get a midterm environment in which the Democrats take back the House, what will be the factors in that? And I think some of the things you're mentioning here, again, can Democrats mount an effective campaign? Can Democrats come up with effective communicators? Can Democrats say, look, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain? No, actually, let's pay attention to the man behind the curtain and what he said he was going to do and what's happening. So some of this is on the Democrats, but I do sense, and again, I don't want to overstate it, but in my last couple of trips, in conversations with Trump supporters, and a lot of the texting I do and emailing with other people who aren't, I'm not working on a piece right now, but we have close to 150 people now in our voter groups. There are a lot of Trump voters out there saying, I'm still with him, I still support him, but raising questions and having doubts. And so we're about to turn into June of the odd-numbered year. This is just, I don't want to overstate it. I'm going to say that again. I know I'm a broken record, but there are some things worth watching out there, and conduct like that is some of the things that make people say, really?
Can I say one more thing about that conduct? As you know, we've told you a lot of times, our listeners know, Margie and I are big-time CNN consumers. We don't work there, but we're consumers. And I have to say, as a consumer of CNN and as someone obsessed with how the media covers Donald Trump, I'm in the sort of the Margaret Sullivan school, is call it what it is kind of thing. I think it sounds to me like decisions were made inside CNN, and I think you and your colleagues are much more direct. Let me give an example of something that some may have missed this weekend. It was all over the Twitterverse. That commencement address at West Point. Let me read you the headline from the New York Times. And as you know, John is a former print guy, often, and Marjorie clearly knows, often people only read the headlines and decide whether they're going to read the story. Here's the New York Times headline on that speech. Trump gives commencement address at West Point, stressing a new era. Okay?
Terrible.
Here's the Independent, which is a paper in the UK. Trump gives rambling speech about trophy wives, golf, and the great late Al Capone in politically charged West Point address. Now, I can make a case that maybe that went a drop too far, but as someone who admires the New York Times, I can also make a case that headline was much fairer to the reader and truer to the reality than the New York Times was. This is a time when people like you and we and others have to make those decisions nonstop, isn't it?
I do think clarity of communication is one of the great challenges of the moment, yes. And the business is under attack, and he attacks us more, and so I understand the caution of some people in the business. Caution should make you extra careful. It should make you double check and triple check and quadruple check everything you should do, but it should not make you abandon the truth or the facts. And he did give a speech that is traditionally, a pep talk, yes, to young men and women who are about to serve their country and do the most honorable, decent thing in the history of our country, volunteers who serve our country and keep us safe. And that was, the speech he gave was anything but normal, anything but traditional, and anything but respectful, I would argue, to those young men and women there. And so, yes, you have to, you have to call it like it is. Be careful first. Be careful, like I said, scrub everything we do. But yes, call it like it is. That is the challenge of our time. And just make sure you're right when you do that.
Talking to John King from CNN.
Don't forget he had his hat on. He has Make America Great Again.
I know.
Just that. I mean, that is, again, just show prior presidents, right? Use the power of the visual, digital age we live in. Show past presidents. Again, one of the things Trump has done is, that like George W. Bush is a rhino, George H.W. Bush is a rhino, even Ronald Reagan, and then put the Democrats in between. This is supposed to be when you're a president. You're not a Democrat, you're not a Republican, you're a president. You're the commander in chief. I think we're constant. The business is in an evolution. I'm having meetings all the time about the technical evolution and revolution of our business. Use the tools we have at our disposal, bring in smart young people who understand this better than some of us dinosaurs, to find a way to make that point to images. Which do you like? I've said this on a lot of our Tuesday conversations. I think one of the things happening in America that I think a lot of, as a parent, number one, you have to have this conversation. And the question is, do Trump critics find a way to frame this conversation in a polite, respectful way so they can actually reach Trump voters? Is this what we want to be teaching our children about our institutions and about respect and about decency? We used to say, you want your kid to grow up to be president.
Yeah.
You want your kid to grow up and behave like this. Forget the job.
Yeah.
Speaking of kid,
yeah, you apparently spent Memorial Day watching your kid play baseball.
My son is a big baseball player. They had a tough run in the tournament. But it was 3 great games, and they're out playing baseball, and it brings a lot of joy to his life. And he's actually pretty good for a 13-year-old. He's probably too good. Sometimes got to be reined in a bit. He's got to remember some lessons. But it's the joy of my life. Some people often say, like, "Oh my God, that's a lot of time." I'm driving out into the middle of Virginia for these tournaments and this and that, and there is nothing I would rather be doing than sitting there in my chair with my camera watching my boy play baseball. It's the greatest thing in the world.
So does a King kid who didn't grow up in Boston and Dorchester love the Red Sox, or is he a traitor to the cause, that 13-year-old kid of yours?
He is not a traitor to the cause. He is depressed at the moment, just like all of us. Sub 500. He's sub 500 Boston Red Sox. I'm told. I told my older son this a long time ago. My older son came home from daycare, and he's 31 now. He asked me, "Could I root for the Orioles?" I said, "Sure, as long as you don't mind sleeping in the backyard."
That's a good one.
Hey, John.
That's a good one.
As always,
See the one that just got married?
At the library.
Yeah.
There. Yeah.
Right here at the library.
Beautiful place to get married. John,
hey, John. Thanks so much for your time, as always. Really appreciate it.
See you next week. Thank you.
John King.
We have been speaking with John King, Chief National Correspondent for CNN, the man behind the reporting project All Over the Map, which is a great reporting project. We heard some of it today. Okay, coming up after a quick break, summer is finally here, kind of. So we're going to talk about golf and you. What is your relationship with golf? What is going on in your family regarding golf? If you're someone whose partner spends all weekend on the golf course, 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours of golf course, is this a tragedy for you trying to get things done around the house, or are you glad to get rid of them for all that time? You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Remember that big recall of deli meat last year? Food safety experts say it could happen again.
Do I foresee another boar's head situation? Absolutely. I worry about the public.
I'm Mary Louise Kelly. Federal job cuts mean fewer people now working in inspections and testing, putting the safety of everything we eat at risk. On the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Boston Ballet, presenting Romeo et Juliette, a fresh take on Shakespeare's timeless tale with breathtaking choreography and live music by the Boston Ballet Orchestra. Opens May 29th. Official tickets at bostonballet.org. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked #1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browning, Marge Regan, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Mayor Wu joins us here tomorrow for an hour from noon to 1. Governor Healy has done her May visit. Her June visit is June 25th from 11 to noon. Okay, Memorial Day is behind us. Summer is ahead, we hope. And golf season is in full swing, apparently. Now, I don't
Full
really get...
swing, ha.
Thank you. I spent all last night working on that, by the way. I finally came up with it. I didn't really get the appeal of golf at all, I must be honest. Walking around for 4 hours trying to hit a tiny ball on a tiny hole while all your alpha male friends pound beers and complain about their families. Now, if you want to go drinking, we have bars. My platform is simple. Keep the Topgolf, the Putt Shack, other indoor venues. Strip malls could use the business. And instead, I learned this word from Katie Theoharides the other day from the trustees of reservations. Let's rewild all the outdoor golf courses. They're a blight on the environment anyway. And think of all the multifamily housing and granny flats, Marjorie, we could build in the heart of places like Brookline. So the phone and text lines are open at 877-301-8970. Golf and you. Try to prove me wrong if you can. What's so great about golf? What am I missing? Now, Marjorie,
Yes.
you have a family member who is a champion golfer, actually.
That's right.
That would be your sister.
My sister, very good golfer.
Are you a golfer?
No, I'm not.
Were you ever a golfer?
No, I'm not. Well, I learned how to play when I was little, but I do not play golf. But I do get the appeal of it. Because,
what is the appeal?
Well, generally speaking, and they are terrible for the environment. It's true. All the pesticides and they use all that water and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I get the appeal of it because you're walking or riding around all day in this really pretty place.
Yeah.
And it's very pleasant to be out in nature all day
Sure it
long.
is,
To me, the golfing part of it kind of ruins it because then
Yeah.
you have a bad shot and you feel terrible. But I also
So I can't just go walk in the woods with
you
your
could.
partner, your kids.
You could go walk. You could go walk in the woods.
Okay,
But I think
good.
a lot of guys and a lot of women, obviously,
Oh, a
my
lot of
sister,
women,
a lot
yeah.
of women play golf
She's
and
a
they're really
sister,
good at it. But I think a lot of guys like to get together and they do. There's some drinking that goes on the golf course. The little golf carts that come around.
You
with
allowed to
drink
drink on the golf course?
Certain places you are.
Oh,
Not every place, but
Not
certain
every place,
places
no.
you are allowed to.
Okay.
And they go off and they hang out for 3 or 4 hours. I think it really matters in business. Playing golf together when you are in business really matters because you can be with someone for 4 hours and try to sell yourself or sell your company
Excellent
or
point.
make a networking thing. And I think a lot of times women get excluded from that, even today. And I also know people
What is it?
who are very grateful that their husbands play a lot of golf.
So they don't have to deal with them
Because
for 4 hours.
they're gone.
For 4 hours.
They're gone. They may get a little annoyed if they have small children because to play around at golf generally is like a 4-hour deal. Then you have to go back to the house for the après golf. We have a few beers with the guys back at the golf course.
So it's like an 8-hour
You may be gone like for 6 or 8 hours. So if you have young kids, you're kind of ticked off about it. If you don't have young kids, you're probably glad he's gone.
So where are you? So I am an anti-golf advocate. You are a neutral. Are you? Where are you on this?
I get the appeal
You
of
do.
golf because it's gorgeous and it's outside. I get the appeal of golf for people in business because I think you can do a lot of business on the golf course.
Can't go to a restaurant and have a meal and do a little.
Well, I think a lot of guys, they have all these tournaments all the time. The guys come in and they play.
They play.
Or companies sponsor
Sure they
tournaments.
do.
Everybody that works at the company goes and gets, or they have, or they bring in the pros to some of these big time places. Bring in the pros to play with the big wigs, the big executives.
So you are for or against rewilding, which I have learned last week, the Friday, the word.
Well, we could do some rewilding. I don't want to ruin my sister's life by taking away her beloved golf course.
That's very kind of you. 877-301-8970. We want you to either sing the praises or damn the sport of golf. By the way, the reason we're talking about this is because some guy, Sean Melia, is that that guy's name?
Yes, this
he
is a guy.
retires,
He's
and his
retired.
goal is to play every golf course.
That's right.
In Massachusetts.
He's going around playing every golf course in Massachusetts.
Why?
And having a great. We don't know if he's married or if his spouse.
Why
what
is he
she
doing
thinks
that? He
about
was married when he played the first course.
Well, he said this started during COVID.
Oh.
And he's a 41-year-old guy, lives in Charlestown, played in the golf team at Holy Cross. He's
Oh.
the man behind a company called Bay State Golf, a
Okay.
burgeoning multimedia company.
It
I'm
is?
reading this from the Boston Globe, Billy
Okay.
Baker, that centers on his documenting his wide variety of courses in the state. So he's going around to
Wow.
all these different
That's
courses,
amazing.
public courses and private courses. I'm also mentioning, we should not neglect this, how do you feel about golf clothes? There's people...
It's a wrong question, obviously.
Is it the wrong question?
The right question is, how do you feel about polyester? And how do you feel about killing all these little polyesters
Is
to
it all
make the
polyester?
outfits?
No 100% cotton
I
on
think
the golf
it's a
course?
polyester
It's a polyester
experience.
kind of thing.
It's generally bright orange and polyester, at least my experience
Okay.
watching golf tournaments.
Here's an anonymous texter who says, my opinion of golf can be summed up in one sentence. Golf, spelled backwards, is flog.
That is beautiful. That is a very deep
Okay.
sentiment.
Margaret from Boston, what do you think, Margaret?
Hi, Margaret.
Hi.
Hi.
I
Oops.
Oh,
that was wrong.
Oh,
Wait, start
Margaret,
again.
We lost you.
We put you on hold by mistake. Start again. And then take it from there.
I'm the only one that doesn't play golf in my family.
Oh.
But it has done. Wait a minute. I can hear the feedback.
No, it's our fault. It's okay. I'm sorry.
My kids.
Yeah.
My kids have played every sport, but golf has been the sport that has taught them the most.
Really?
They've met the nicest. Yes.
Oh.
I have a girl who used to play with, like, she would be out there in the morning, and they'd put her in with a threesome of men, and she'd come home and tell us what they were talking about. They always kept it, clean.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, with golf, they learn how to interact with older people. They learn how to have manners. The dress isn't that bad, Jim.
Margaret, why are you the holdout in your family? Why are you the only one who's not playing?
Because somebody's got to drive them around to all these tournaments.
Okay. Well, you're a good person, better than I am, Margaret. Hey, Margaret, thanks for the call.
Oh, I love it.
Steve from Thank you a lot. Steve from Wakefield summarized my position perfectly. Golf is like paying to be stuck in traffic. Expensive, hot sun, environmental disaster. Get rid of it already.
Well, Mark from Brookline says, golf is fun, social, and challenging, all things that Jim hates. And then we have an anonymous texter, that's a good one, who says, be grateful for the game of golf. My husband retired recently, and without golf, he would be home driving me crazy, like telling me that I don't know how to boil water. I am not kidding, says one texter. And then the other one says, best thing about golf is Donald Trump isn't rage posting for a few hours every day. That's from Joel in Connecticut.
Do you remember Donald Trump? I know people are saying, do you have to bring up Donald Trump? Yes, I do. Donald Trump used to trash Barack Obama for playing golf at critical moments. I looked up this morning. How often do you think Trump played golf in his first term? How much?
God, he's playing a lot of golf.
Every 5.6 days.
He's playing a lot of golf, and he's winning all the time.
He's
amazing.
He's winning.
Yep.
He's tired of winning.
And you know what? You look up Donald Trump's swing. You almost never see his swing because he's got a lousy swing. Charlie from...
Yeah, how you can tell if someone's a Trump fan who takes his picture or not when he's playing golf? If the picture is from behind and below, they're not a Trump fan.
Yeah.
If it's from the front, they are.
Well, apparently he's pretty good despite the lousy swing.
Says who?
Well, he supposedly wins all these tournaments. He has to be good playing that much golf.
Putin is the greatest hockey player in
Russia. I'm suspicious, like I said, when you see that swing. Charlie from Wayland, what do you think, Charlie?
Hello, Charlie.
So I've been a lifelong golfer.
Okay.
And retired for about 10 years.
Okay.
My wife, when the last kid was in high school, decided that she was going to take up golf.
Yeah.
And I hear a little echo there.
I'm sorry. It's our fault. Keep going as best you can, please. Thank you.
So she came up. So after a couple of years, she got hooked on the game as an avid golfer, and came up with the idea of playing golf in all 50 states.
Oh my God!
I'm a pilot. I'm a pilot. I have a small single-engine plane, and we have been flying all over the country. We have now played golf in 47 states. The only one we couldn't fly my plane to was
Hawaii.
Hawaii, which we took a commercial flight.
You're
we
incredible.
have 3 left to go, and we are going to fly to Michigan this summer, play golf there. We're going to then fly to Idaho, and then we're going to go to Alaska and hit number 50.
Can I tell you something?
Oh, my God.
As much as I have zero interest in golf, that's a romantic story. That is fabulous. So how much fun do the two of you have when you check one off your list? Is that great?
It's, so we'll get back in the plane. I've got a little calendar that has a map of the state.
That's fabulous.
And I'll fill it in with a color, and we high-five. And it's also just been great to go to these states and cities that we would never go to for another reason and just kind of parachute in, see what it's like, meet the local people, and people have been friendly everywhere we've gone. It's been a great experience.
So, Charlie, do you play public courses, private courses, a mix of both? What do you do?
Yeah, a mix of both.
Yeah.
So we're members of a club in Hudson, and our pro can call pros at other courses and see if we can get on. But the super snobby ones like the country club,
in Brookline,
you have to know someone to get in there. So I would say it's probably 20% private courses, and the rest of them have been these are resort courses where the public can get off.
Hey, Charlie, when you hit 50, call us back. No matter what we're talking
that's
about,
a great
let us
story.
know. That is a great story.
That's a great story.
Now, here's Elaine in New Hampshire, who I think makes the point that you were trying to make.
Yes.
You want to read that?
I want my husband to take up golf. He's home all the time.
Well,
it is true. I think a lot of people, especially once they get to retirement age and their husbands are home, they can't wait to get rid of them. So it's a marriage saver, I think, for a lot of people.
Can you read this really jealous text from Rebecca in Florida?
Rebecca in Florida. Just as expected, criticism of golf attire from a man who wears flying nun collars. Flying nun colors, I should say, and Dickies. Yeah.
The point of that is when I had my television show, Marjorie would text me as soon as it was over.
The lapels.
Saying that, not lapels, the collars on my shirts were like pointed up like I could take off.
It wasn't the collars on your shirts.
It wasn't?
It was the collars on your suit coat.
Oh.
Which would be flipping up at the
You know
ends.
what I did?
I don't know how you
Like
managed
Charlie
to achieve
just
that.
I would fly home right after the show. Fly right from Brighton to Cambridge.
Okay. Steve in Rosendale.
Listen to this. Wait, Steve. According to the Huffington Post, March 29th, American taxpayers have now spent more than $26 million. No, it's not possible. In Trump's second term, so the president can play golf at one of his own courses.
I'm sure, because they're flying to the golf courses after the Secret Service with him.
During his first term, Trump's insistence on playing golf at his own resorts cost taxpayers $151 million. Various expenses, including moving the motorcade equipment, security personnel around, as well as the immense cost of Air Force One.
Well, remember the stories about how he was charging the Secret Service full freight to stay
in
in
the
his hotels. They wouldn't even give him the break on staying in the hotels, and that seems to be in violation of the Emoluments Clause. But nobody cares about that
Nobody
anymore
cares.
either.
You and me.
Yeah.
How do you feel about miniature golf, or mini golf, as we call it in New England? How do you feel about mini golf?
Well, you know, it's fun for the kids.
Yeah.
They love to go out there. And
I'd like
you
to
know.
say I've had many holes in one.
Really? Have you had many holes in one? I always like it when
Yes.
somebody's like, you know, they're thinking instead of putting, they're supposed to be swinging the golf club. So they're out there, and all of a sudden you're in the mini golf hole 5, and the ball comes flying across, and you have to duck to get out of the way. You can have a lot of shenanigans
Yes, you can.
at mini golf. And people are having too many cocktails, and that can happen too in the major golf courses where people will either have those little trucks, those little carts come by, or they will have...
Wait, a cart with liquor on it?
Yes.
While you're playing golf?
Yes.
And why is the person drinking not going to hit you in the head
I don't know.
with a golf ball?
I don't know, but I have heard about that happening, Jim. And sometimes, you know what people do? They sneak the liquor into their golf bag.
Ooh.
It's outrageous. Yep.
I've seen that at the State House, too, by the way. Same thing.
Steve from Rosendale. Hi,
Hey, Steve.
Well, I'd encourage everyone not to sneak alcohol into your golf bag.
Good.
As someone who runs a bar and grill at one of Boston's public golf courses.
Do you want to tell
which
us
is what
which one?
politicians should be playing at.
Do you want to tell us?
Yes,
You
I
don't
can
have
tell you it's the George.
Good.
No, it's the George Wright Golf Course in Hyde Park. It's
Oh,
one of
great.
the
Oh,
beautiful
yeah.
public golf courses in the Northeast. Jim, you should come out and at least get a fried chicken sandwich.
Well, I
and enjoy
would
the
do.
Beautiful scenery.
That I would do. I will do that. So make the case for golf beyond the fried chicken sandwich, Steve.
What I love about golf is that you have people from all walks of life, whether they're retired, whether they're professionals. We have high school students in for tournaments, college students, an incredibly diverse group, especially because we are a public golf course.
Mm-hmm.
And they can go out, whether you're in a cart or you're walking 18 holes. The grounds crew at our golf course, the Parks and Rec team, the city officials do such a good job with our golf course. It just creates a really great outing to get some fresh air, to get away from your computer screens. And, you know, I think, I say I'm biased, I think we do a wonderful job making sure that you have the amenities, the food, the drinks, to really tie in the whole experience. We have local community families from the community come out on weeknights and with their family. They're not golfing. They just come in to eat, enjoying the outside, sitting out on the patio.
Listen to
and
you.
It's a city building.
Well, you know,
wait, can we talk? Let's talk
there's a lot
turkey
of-
here.
there's a-
How good is the fried chicken sandwich before I drive all the way out to Hyde Park? Is it really good, or are you BSing?
No, I'm not kidding. It's considered. We have 2 locations. We're in Brookline at Robert T. Lynch.
Yeah.
And that location is won best fried chicken sandwich I think Boston Magazine.
Wow.
Wait a minute, is that the Putterham?
and-
Is that the Putterham one?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, that's a public course.
You had a
That's
fried chicken sandwich there?
I've been to that. But I've been there many times. It's a great little golf course. They have a great snack bar there and a great. You can sit out there
It is.
over. Is it the first tee you're sitting over? I forget. But
Listen to you.
You're looking at. Yeah, it's great.
Steve, I'm going to meet you over a chicken sandwich. Thank you for calling. You make
Yeah.
a good
And-
case.
and-
Listen to this.
yes,
Thank you.
and the Franklin Park course, isn't that like a very fancy design course? The Franklin Park course, William
How the
J.
hell would I
Devine.
know?
Yeah, that's a public course too.
Can I read this text?
It's the second oldest golf course in the nation.
It is?
Yes, and I'm looking it up. It's designed by a very famous golf architect. I'm
Who's
looking. Premier Golf redesigned the layout here.
cares.
Bobby Jones, Donald J. Ross. I believe that is the person that designed.
What are you looking at Jamie for? What the hell
Because
does he
I'm
know
hoping
about
he's going to
this?
look it up for me if I can't find it.
Okay, so here are two texts. Seth in Rhode Island, I can relate to.
Yeah.
The reason why I play golf is for those drink carts. That's one. Here's an anonymous texter that is excellent. I am a single woman, and I have a crush on a guy I met who asked me if I wanted to play around. I got excited until I realized he was asking me to play golf.
Oh,
That's
that's
a
good
pretty
one.
clever text.
That's
actually.
a good one.
very good.
Okay. Let's go to Neil.
Wait a second. Is this the fried chicken sandwich from this guy's joint, or is this just the fried chicken sandwich in general?
I don't know.
Whatever.
Looks good to me.
Steve sounded like he was telling the truth. I'll be checking it out.
No, that's a great course in Hyde Park, and it's a great
How the
course.
hell do you know?
Because I know people that have gone to play.
Like who?
My son.
He played there?
He was on the golf team.
What
at
did he think of the
Brooklyn High
fried
School.
chicken sandwich?
I don't know what he thought of the fried chicken sandwich, but I used to pick him up. I used to sit out there on the lawn, the Putterham Golf Course. It was
did?
great. Yes, and then they all joked. I told you this story about how you had to go try out, for the golf team.
Oh,
you
at
had
the
to go
country
to
club.
the country club in Brookline, and there's a person sitting in the booth when you drive in there, and you think that that's a person that's going to stop you. Actually, it's a fake person.
It's a flat person.
There's not a real person there. But all the parents are making a joke that we should all take a good look around because we're never going to be back here again. And that is probably true.
A friend of ours took me to the country club
That's
for
it,
dinner.
the country club.
They have peppermint ice cream homemade.
Oh, I tell you, Jim.
Oh, my God.
Doesn't get much better than that.
The only thing better than that is a good fried chicken sandwich. Would you agree? It's Steve's place.
Absolutely, yeah.
Let's go to Neil in
from
New Hampshire. Hi, Neil. Welcome.
Hey.
Hey.
So I'm a doctor,
Yeah.
and I was with Jim. Are you getting an echo? I can go up.
Yeah,
I'm so
we're having
sorry.
an echo problem. I'm
But
sorry.
Keep talking, Neil. You're fine on this
All right,
end.
so
I'm sorry.
I'm a doctor, and I was with Jim totally. A good walk spoiled.
That's
Until
right.
I moved up. to New
Great
England,
line.
And I had all these patients all of a sudden who were men, usually over 70. And from April to October, they had great blood sugar control.
That's great.
But between October
That's
and
a
April,
riot.
they had terrible blood sugar control, and I could not figure it out, this New England phenomenon. Then one day I was examining this guy's feet, and I realized that he had a golfer's tan. There's tail below the
Yes,
socks and
yes.
socks. And I asked him how he got that. And he said, well, I play golf 4 days a week. And I asked all my other patients who had that same improvement in their blood sugars. They were all playing golf.
That's incredible.
And I thought, this is a golf phenomenon. They're out there 4 hours, 4 days a week. They're not eating. They're hitting the ball. Some of them may even be walking. Who knows? But it really seemed to be a real phenomenon.
Well, Neil, I'm so glad you called because I don't know the length of every golf course, but I've heard my sister claim that she's walking 5 miles a day every time she plays golf, which seems reasonable considering it's 18 holes and they're long holes and stuff, and it keeps you. And you also see people that are really old playing golf, well into their 80s. So I'm sure there are some good health results, I would think.
Well, obviously, this guy's a doctor.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, Neil, that's a great story on the other side of this equation. And thanks for being open-minded. We appreciate it. By the way, this fried chicken sandwich that we're looking at is an actual picture of one of Steve's places. It's a Google review of the Putterham course.
The Putterham course is great. It's a public course, like I said. It's right on
Beautiful
the Rotary,
sandwich.
right at the West Roxbury,
I don't
Brookline
care about the
line.
course. I care about the chicken.
That's the thing. There's a lot of great public courses, a lot of great.
Here's an anonymous texter.
Yeah.
I think that Bill Belichick was going out for that fried chicken sandwich when they caught him shirtless on camera.
Not talking about this.
Well, no, she's not talking about it. We always do.
Down where you go on vacation in Wellfleet, they have a great
Yeah.
public course down
They
there
do?
too. Yeah, they do. A lot
How
of
many times have I played that course?
You have not played.
I've not played.
No,
That's
I can't
correct.
see you
I didn't
quite
even know
on the
there
golf.
was a golf course in Wellfleet.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of good ones.
Do you know that when I worked at Grossinger's, which
Yes,
is the Cats...
they have a golf course there?
It was a resort in the Catskills.
Yep. Golf
the
course?
matriarch, as in Jenny Grossinger, was still alive when I went there. They built a new golf course.
Mm-hmm.
The old golf course, which was beautiful, was exclusively for the use of the staff. Is that incredible?
You go.
I played.
You did?
A little, yeah.
Yeah. I don't see you in a
You know what people
somehow.
called me as I was on the 18th?
What'd they call you?
Hey, Tiger, you're looking good. That's what people would say every day.
Yeah, we were
It's really
talking
good.
about that with Trenni Casey before, about how people that never were going to watch golf on TV watched it when Tiger Woods was in his prime, and they certainly watched it when he came back. Yeah, me too. And when he won the Masters, was it the Masters?
When he won it a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that
like
was
40.
unbelievable.
By the way, Bill from Scituate says, golf is diverse. How many or underemployed black guys do you see in whale pants with $300 drivers? I think that's a fairly good question.
Yeah. Woody, our UPS driver that texts all the time, he texted a while ago talking about how hostile he became toward golf when he used to work at a golf course years ago. And every time he goes by somewhere near in a public course or anywhere, any other course where he sees somebody about to tee off or about to take a shot.
Honks the horn?
He honks the horn.
I love him. Woody, you're my man.
Yeah.
Ian and Quincy, that's the other thing I don't like about golf, by the way, that you can't talk. What's the point? Why can you talk in a baseball? When a batter is ready to hit a baseball at 100 miles an hour,
I don't know.
You can talk, but you can't talk when he's hitting a stationary
But since
ball.
down at my sister's house, whenever Saturday afternoon, Sunday afternoon, we have to watch the golf tournaments.
You do?
Everybody's always whispering.
That's ridiculous.
John is about to take
Doesn't that drive you nuts?
No, I like the fact that it's very quiet.
I think at Live Golf, where the murderous Saudis are funding it, I think you're allowed to talk.
They play music.
They do?
Yeah.
You don't like that? You're a purist?
No, I think Live Golf is...
Do you whisper? You don't whisper. Tell me you don't whisper. Do you whisper?
I'm not the MC at a golf game, Jim.
very
I've
distressing.
not been in any of these big tournaments, but that's what they do. That's what they do.
Let's do the show like that. Ian
and Quincy. Hi.
Hi.
Hey, how you guys doing?
We're good. Quiet.
I just wanted to say that you were saying you can't talk during golf. I play with my dad and a bunch of the uncles and other cousins in the family when we go out. And it's usually a lot of banter, a lot of talking, people talking each other's backswings, having a good time. And my dad is pretty legendary because he hates playing in front of anybody in the course. And he never wants to play in the hot sun, so he makes sure he's like the first tee time at the DCR course there in Newton as much as he can. On a Saturday morning, 5 a.m., he's out there playing golf. And he plays in shorts no matter the weather. So if it's like the middle of October or September, he's still out in shorts.
I have to say, that kind of story has appealed to me. Like the guy with his wife playing in 47 states. Ian, thanks for your call. We appreciate it.
A lot of people have written that. We have a Mike from North Carolina says, some of my best memories were on a golf course. We played 3 days in a row with my dad and son in Florida. My son caddied during the summer. No better way to spend a day with your best friend than on a golf course. And that, I think, is part of the appeal. You go out with your buddies or women. I'm getting criticized for not talking about enough women. Somebody just texted me about that a lot of women play golf, and that's absolutely true. There's always a big fight. Remember we had a fight, it was in the Globe a couple of years ago, about tea times. That the men all got to go early tea times on the weekends. Women saying, hey, we're working Monday through Friday
There was a lawsuit around that.
Yeah, they had to fight to get equal
You know what I'm
tea
going to do
times.
to show that I'm open-minded? Next time you and Jared play a round of golf, I'm going to caddy for both of you. How about that? So, Jared,
we got a
let me
big
guess.
approval for the chicken sandwich. Lots of people saying that
At Putterham?
At Putterham.
We should go
there
and check it out.
Yep, go. It's in Brookline.
Steve's Place in Brookline. So, Jared, I would guess that, let me not be extreme, I would guess you have never gotten close to a tee and a golf ball in your whole life. Is that a fair assumption?
You would be totally correct.
And why is that? What's the aversion thing there going on?
I don't know. I just never had time, and I never picked it up. But you know what we do have in some similar is I just had that peppermint stick ice cream at the country club.
How fabulous is that?
La-di-da.
Yeah.
With chocolate sauce, it's incredible.
You know what they did, though, was unfortunate to allow me into the, they blindfolded me when I went in. And then they led me out in cuffs.
Hey, you guys, we have an answer from a texter.
What is it?
Why do the golf announcers speak so quietly and whisper? So they won't wake up the people who are watching.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
Worst sport in the world. Okay, but even though, have you ever had the chicken sandwich at Putterham, Steve's Place?
No, because I can't get past the peppermint stick ice cream.
Okay, fine. Are we done with you? Yes, no, we're not done with you. I forgot.
We haven't started. What's on the show, Jared?
That's what I meant to say.
By the way, you can't caddy for mini golf, which is the closest that
I
I've
could
come.
caddy. That I could probably handle, mini golf, actually.
Marjorie, should we have Jim caddy our mini golf tournament?
Absolutely.
Can I tell you, some of my
Absolutely.
proudest moments are not just holes in one on mini golf, but holes in one that ricochet off the wall on the hole. You ever had one of those babies?
Probably.
Jim has got a
did you
mighty
do that while
shot.
getting it through the windmill?
Maybe I did, maybe I didn't.
They always have windmills, right? Is it? You ever been to miniature golf? Doesn't have a windmill.
What was the one next to Hilltop Steakhouse on Route 1 there?
Oh
that
my
big
God, I don't
dragon
know.
or
With
whatever
the
the hell it was.
dinosaur.
The dinosaur.
Okay, well, this is a really uninteresting conversation. So, not your fault, mine. What are you? What's on the show there?
Well, one thing I'm very excited about, the Arrival Art Fair, which is going to be happening in early June out in the Berkshires. We're going to be talking about that. This is an antidote to all the big art fairs that happen. It's going to be involving all the museums, chefs, everything. Titus Burgess, you might remember him from Unbreakable Kimmy
Yes,
Schmidt. He's
indeed.
going back into Oh Mary, the play, and also going to be performing at the Umbrella Art Center in Concord. We'll speak to Titus Burgess. And Jane Eaglin, the Grammy-winning soprano, is here.
Great.
Wow, another great show.
I know. We've had her on. She's terrific.
She's a fabulous golfer, by the way. I don't know if you've ever discussed with her.
We'll talk about
the
that.
back nine. I hope you talk about that.
Or maybe we
yeah.
won't.
Maybe you shouldn't, yeah.
Okay.
Jared, nice to see you. We'll be listening.
Okay.
That's it, Marjorie. Show's over.
Okay. Thanks for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Thanks to everybody who came down to the Boston Public Library.
Thank you all.
Keep up with us 24/7 wave our podcast, or check out our TikTok page, Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow, we're back here at the library with Harvard National Security expert Juliet Kayyem. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu will be here for Ask the Mayor from noon to 1, taking our questions and yours, and naturalist and author Cy Montgomery. Our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Our executive producer is Jane Bologna. Special thanks to our BPL staff, Maddie Geyer, Bill Francis, Juan Jose Cadena, and thanks to our host of the Newsfeed Cafe and across the street at the Lenox Hotel. Stay tuned to the Culture Show with Jared Bone, which starts right after us here on 89.7 GBH. I am Marjorie Egan.
I am Jim Browdy.
Thanks so much for
See you
tuning in.
tomorrow.
Hope you can tune in tomorrow.
Mayor Wu, noon to 1.
Mayor noon to 1. Have a great day.
See ya.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around?
Tonight at 9 on GBH2.
Classical Radio Boston is WCRB-FM 99.5 HD1 Lowell, Boston, WGBH-FM HD2 Boston, WCAI-FM HD2 Woods Hole, WJMF-FM HD1 Smithfield, Providence, and at classical.org.
It's just about 2 o'clock on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon. I'm Greg Farisi. Thanks for tuning in. Today I've got Haydn's drum roll for you, and also Gershwin coming up in the focus at 4. This is the new Pro Arte Guitar Trio.